Chapter 21. A show of strength. Jifeng's eyes widened at Lin Yi's words. The kid must know something. Jifeng would have been relieved if Lin Yi had acted like he didn't know what was going on, but Lin Yi had said something like this. Jifeng could tell what was going on no matter how stupid he was. Fortunately, Lin Yi's words meant that he didn't want to stick his nose in his business. Jifeng relaxed a little. If the principal or the board of directors were to find out about this, he'd be done for as a dean. Ha! Jifeng laughed dryly. Lin Yi, if you run into any trouble in school, feel free to look for me. Remember my phone number later. Thank you, Mr. Wang. Lin Yi quickly put on a fearful expression as he thanked Jifeng. Lin Yi knew that his identity was a little special. He was here for Meng Yao, and it was only natural that he'd do something out of line. He couldn't go to Pengzhan and Faubert for help every time something happened. So he might as well use this opportunity to build a good relationship with Jifeng. It seemed like he'd achieved his goal. As long as he didn't go overboard, Jifeng would be able to take care of it for him. Lin Yi followed Jifeng to Class 5's classroom. Jifeng pushed the door open and waved at the homeroom teacher. This is the new transfer student, Lin Yi. Please arrange a seat for him. Liang's eyes widened when he saw Lin Yi. That's right. Wasn't this the kid who kicked him yesterday? He, Gao Xiaofu, and Nai Peo had been chasing after him for half a day, but they'd let him slip away. Who would have thought that he'd come knocking on his door again? I'm Lin Yi. My name is Lin Yi. Yi as in elegant. After a brief self-introduction, the homeroom teacher arranged for him to sit at a single table at the back of the class. The homeroom teacher understood that Lin Yi had some sort of background, but it wasn't the right time to arrange seats at the start of the school year. The homeroom teacher couldn't do anything about it now, so he had to force Lin Yi to sit at the back for now. Lin Yi, however, wasn't too particular about his seat. He nodded happily and walked to the last row of the class. Meng Yao's head was lowered as Lin Yi introduced himself, and Yushu, on the other hand, stared at Lin Yi like a curious baby. It gave Lin Yi the creeps. This Miss Chen was even harder to deal with than Miss Chu. Liang shot a glance at Nai Peo, since Lin Yi had to walk past him to get to his seat. Nai Peo made an okay gesture at Liang, indicating that there was no problem. Lin Yi had noticed at the moment he entered the class, Liang was a student of 12th grade class 5 as well, and so he paid extra attention to him. All of his little movements after that naturally entered Lin Yi's eyes. When Lin Yi walked past Nai Peo, the latter raised his right leg, intending to send Lin Yi tumbling. Lin Yi smiled in disdain as he raised his leg to kick, but if he did, Nai Peo's bones would probably be fractured. It was Lin Yi's first day at school, and he didn't want to cause too much trouble. He stepped on Nai Peo's foot, causing him to yelp in pain. Ah, what's this? Lin Yi looked at Nai Peo, not knowing what was going on. Sorry, I stepped on your foot. Zhang Nai Peo, do you have a problem? The homeroom teacher, Miss Lu, knew what Nai Peo was like, but the kid had some background, and he hung out with Liang all the time. Miss Lu couldn't say much. It's nothing. Nai Peo's face was red from the pain as he shook his head, suppressing the numbness in his foot. Naturally, he wouldn't tell the teacher what Lin Yi did. That'd be too embarrassing. Liang was quite far away, so he didn't know what happened between Lin Yi and Nai Peo. But when he saw that Lin Yi was fine, and Nai Peo was the one making a fuss, he looked at Nai Peo with a reproachful gaze. Nai Peo couldn't say it out loud, so he could only stare at Lin Yi, thinking that he'd get back at him after class. He didn't know if Lin Yi was doing it on purpose or not, since Lin Yi didn't even look at his feet when he walked. His apologetic attitude made it seem like he really didn't know what was going on, and that made Nai Peo very depressed. Lin Yi's seat wasn't too far from Meng Yao and Yushu, and he could see them as soon as he raised his head. It wasn't a bad choice, since he could keep an eye on the two at all times. After all, his main responsibility was to take care of Meng Yao, and he was paid to do so. It was Lin Yi's first day at school. He'd never been to a classroom before, and he'd only seen the classroom, the school, and the students in the classroom from the internet. Lin Yi opened his bag and took out his physics textbook. The first class was physics, and Lin Yi had confirmed it with the timetable. Today is Lin Yi's first day at school. I hope that everyone can take care of the new classmate. Also, I don't want to see anyone bully the new students. He's already a 12th grader, and I don't want anyone to be unable to graduate because of this. Miss Lu still had to warn Pin Liang and the others. Pin Liang, in particular, was known as one of the big four in school, and bullying other students was nothing out of the ordinary for him. Of course, Pin Liang didn't seem to care about the warning. Lin Yi was flipping through his book when a small ball of paper fell on his desk. Lin Yi froze. This Zhang Naipeo couldn't be that bad, could he? Throwing a paper ball at him after getting stepped on? How was he at kindergarten level? Lin Yi raised his head to find Yushu looking at him with a smile on her face. Lin Yi felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't the girl's doing, was it? Yushu pointed at the paper ball on Lin Yi's desk before turning away. Lin Yi paused as he looked at the paper ball on his desk, and then at Yushu's back. Was this the legendary passing notes? Man, it'd be great if it was a pretty and gentle girl passing notes to him. Yushu was just one of the few things that matter. She was pretty, but gentle was nowhere to be found. Chapter 22. Follow us if you've got balls. The guy you kicked in the ass yesterday is in our class too. They're plotting something against you. The note read. Lin Yi smiled after reading the note. He didn't think that Yushu was reminding him out of the goodness of her hearts. The girl was the type that wanted to see the world in chaos. She was probably trying to get Lin Yi to teach Pin Liang and the others a lesson. Pin Liang was probably annoying her to no end. The physics teacher was an old man in his 50s, but his knowledge was solid. Lin Yi had studied the content on his own before, but he was still able to listen to it with great interest. Pin Liang called Xiaofu and Naipeo out after class, but didn't come looking for trouble with Lin Yi. Lin Yi, on the other hand, couldn't be bothered with them. Naipeo, what's wrong with you? Pin Liang glared at Naipeo. Pissed, didn't I tell you to show him who's boss? What the hell are you doing? Don't talk about it. Liang bro, I was just about to put my foot out, trying to trip him up, when he stepped on my foot. Motherfucker, it hurts. Naipeo said bitterly, it still hurts. You were discovered by him? Pin Liang frowned. He'd just gotten kicked by Lin Yi yesterday, and he knew how strong Lin Yi was. Naipeo must have been in a lot of pain. I don't think so. He didn't even lower his head. Naipeo was suspicious as well. Fuck, I didn't think we'd fall into a country bumpkin's hands one after another. We'll block him in the washroom later. I'll show him the difference between piss and beer. Pin Liang said hatefully. He'd been named one of the big four ever since he entered the school, and he'd never been taken advantage of like this before. And we'll show him the difference between shit and cake, Xiaofu added. The three were discussing when a man in black walked over with a cigarette in his mouth. I say, Liang, what are you guys doing? Having a meeting or something? Isn't this Brother Ming? Pin Liang raised his head and saw one of the big four, Zhou Ruoming. The guy had done more bad things than Pin Liang had ever done. He'd heard that he'd dragged a girl from his class into the woods and raped her in middle school. Zhou Ruoming nodded, enjoying the Ming bro. His family background wasn't as good as Pin Liang's, but he was more ruthless and had a big brother in the underworld. That was why he was popular in school. Is there anything I can help you with? Zhou Ruoming asked. It's nothing. He's just a country bumpkin. I'll show him who's boss in this school. Pin Liang naturally didn't want to lose face in front of Zhou Ruoming. F***CK. He's just a country bumpkin. Yet you guys are so serious about holding a meeting. So Ruoming lost interest immediately. He thought it was something fun, so he shook his head and left. He'd had his eye on a girl from class 9, 12th grade. He'd been trying to figure out how to get his hands on her, but that cold beauty was very prideful and aloof. Ruoming was wondering if he should force himself on her. The reason why he said it was his sister was because Ruoming was studying in the college entrance exam tutorial class, the 4th year of high school. It was a class for students who couldn't get into college, and Ruoming could spend money to get into college anytime he wanted. Staying in high school was actually his own idea. He enjoyed this kind of life, and he understood that it wouldn't be the case once he went to a university in another city. University students and high school students had different worldviews. He'd be out of his family's sphere of influence, and he'd die a horrible death if he continued to act so arrogantly. So Ruoming told his father that he'd study for another year and take the college entrance exam next year. Naturally, Mr. Zhou agreed when he saw that his son was willing to study. He didn't know about Lin Yi's little tricks. Lin Yi passed the 3 periods peacefully, with Meng Yao acting as if she didn't know him at all. She didn't even look at him once, and Yushu, on the other hand, kept sneaking sneaky glances at him. Lin Yi naturally didn't think that Yushu had fallen for him. The girl probably wanted to see him fight with Pin Liang. The 3rd period was the daily exercise break, and Lin Yi was about to go to the field with his classmates when he saw Pin Liang, Nai Peo, and Xiaofu walking towards him. He was in the last row, and there was no way he'd pass by here when he left the classroom. Without a doubt, these 3 were here for him. Lin Yi also knew that it was only a matter of time before they came looking for him. Yeah, Yao, look, that idiot Pin Liang's going to look for Shield Bro. Yushu had been paying attention to Pin Liang and Lin Yi's movements for the past few periods. Seeing that Pin Liang was finally going to look for trouble with Lin Yi, she got excited. She'd wanted to see Pin Liang make a fool out of himself for a long time, but hadn't done anything because of the elders. Now that someone had done it for her, naturally, she was excited. Oh, Pin Liang's going to teach that bastard a lesson then. Meng Yao was still pissed off. No way. Yao, why are you siding with Pin Liang? Yushu blinked. Don't tell me you actually like him? Who the hell likes him? But I hate Lin Yi even more. Meng Yao humphed. Let's go. Ignore him. Don't. I want to see who's going to win. Yushu pulled Meng Yao, not letting her go. Fine. I want to see how that bastard is going to get beaten up. It'll help me vent my anger. Meng Yao said, but she didn't know why, but she didn't want Lin Yi to lose. In comparison, she still hated Pin Liang more. Lin Yi was despicable, but he wasn't that despicable. So, the 2 curious babies held hands and hid at the door of the classroom, observing the movements inside the classroom. Kid, do you know why we're looking for you? Pin Liang stood in front of Lin Yi, looking cocky as he pointed at Lin Yi. I know because I kicked your ass yesterday, and you fell flat on your face, Lin Yi said calmly, as if it wasn't a big deal. Fuck, why are you so cocky if you know? You're so cocky. Nai Peo glared as he reached for Lin Yi's collar. Your foot doesn't hurt anymore, does it? Lin Yi easily pushed Nai Peo's hand to the side, mocking him. Nai Peo's face reddened. This was a humiliation he'd never felt before, so Lin Yi did it on purpose. Chapter 23. Toilet range, sure. I need to go to the washroom anyway. Pin Liang's words were exactly what Lin Yi was thinking. He'd caught the dean's weakness this morning, but Lin Yi wasn't sure if the dean would be able to help him if anything went wrong. Finding a place with no one around would be ideal. Pin Liang didn't know what to do now that Lin Yi agreed so readily. He looked at Nai Peo and Xiaofu, not knowing what to do. They'd always get scared when they wanted to teach someone a lesson, begging for mercy when they heard that they needed to go to the washroom. Lin Yi was the only one who said that he needed to go to the washroom. Let's go then. Pin Liang wasn't in a good mood talking to Lin. He didn't give him any pleasure at all. Yao, look at Shield Bro. He's so cool. Yushu waved her little fists excitedly. We'll have a good show later. I think he's got a puncture to his brain. He's still acting like he's facing 3 people. Meng Yao curled her lips. Lin Yi and Pin Liang walked out of the classroom to see Meng Yao and Yushu standing at the doorway. Lin Yi didn't think much of it. He knew that Yushu was here to watch the show, but Pin Liang put on a fawning smile. Yao Yao, why are you here? Why can't I be here? I can be wherever I want. It's none of your business. Meng Yao rolled her eyes. What are you guys doing? Me? This country bumpkin doesn't know anything. I'm teaching him a lesson. Pin Liang didn't know that Lin Yi and Meng Yao knew each other. He thought that they didn't have a relationship. As far as Pin Liang was concerned, girls liked strong men. The stronger he was, the safer they'd feel. As a result, he'd always acted arrogant in front of Meng Yao, not knowing that it only made Meng Yao hate him more. Oh, you should really teach him a lesson then. Meng Yao glared at Lin Yi faintly as she spoke. Who told you to take advantage of me yesterday? Today's the day you get what you deserve. Huh? All right. Pin Liang was overjoyed when he heard that Meng Yao agreed with him. So Meng Yao liked watching him bully others. It seemed like Meng Yao liked those kinds of students as well. If he'd known that she liked them, wouldn't he have gotten her way a long time ago? You can do it, Lin Yi. You can do it, Lin Yi. You can do it. Yushu called out at an inopportune moment. Pin Liang was speechless. Weren't these two sisters in the same group? So Yushu liked country bumpkins like Lin Yi? Pin Liang was pissed, but he pretended like he didn't hear anything. After all, he couldn't afford to piss off this girl. One punch from her brother could send him flying into space. Shu, why are you cheering for him? Meng Yao frowned. You cheer for Zhong Pingliang, and I'll cheer for Lin Yi. That's fair. Yushu said confidently. Lin Yi didn't stay for long. He turned around and walked into the men's washroom. Hey, can you guys stay here? Don't go to the washroom. Yushu didn't want them to go to the washroom. She wouldn't be able to watch the show. Pin Liang pointed at the washroom, meaning that Lin Yi was already in there. There was nothing he could do. He wanted to do it in the school hallway. It might attract the dean's attention, but he'd do it if he could win the girl's heart. In fact, students like Pin Liang were still afraid of the homeroom teacher and dean on the surface. After all, he was still a student. He wasn't as fearless as the hooligans in the real world. If the dean really did tell his father about his bad behavior, he wouldn't have a good time at home. But most of the time, the homeroom teacher and dean would turn a blind eye to young masters like him. They knew that they couldn't study, so they let them be as long as they didn't cause any trouble. Why don't you guys come in and watch? Pin Liang said, after some hesitation. That's the men's washroom. Yushu pointed at the big men word. Liang Yi, you're not asking us to make mistakes, are you? Pin Liang didn't like being called Liang Yi, but he didn't do anything about it. He smiled. It's fine. Everyone's in the exercise break. No one's going to the washroom at this time. We'll go in first. Pin Liang was afraid that Lin Yi would run into the washroom and lock himself in, so he quickly ran into the washroom with Nai Peo and Xiaofu. Yao Yao, should we go in? Yushu didn't want to miss out on this exciting scene. She wanted to see Lin Yi beat up Pin Liang. I don't think that's a good idea. Meng Yao hesitated. After all, she'd never been to the men's washroom before. What's wrong with that? Didn't Pin Liang say that no one's going to the washroom at this time? Yushu grabbed Meng Yao's hand and ran towards the washroom. Man, Meng Yao sighed, feeling that something wasn't right. She had a bad feeling about this. Lin Yi really did want to go to the washroom. He drank a big bowl of noodle soup in the morning and spent most of his time familiarizing himself with the classroom. He didn't have time to go to the washroom. This washroom was quite high class with its own urinal. It wasn't like the latrines in the village. In fact, back in the village where Lin Yi lived, he could just go to the washroom anywhere. Lin Yi was peeing when he heard footsteps behind him. Lin Yi saw Pin Liang, Nai Peo, and Xiaofu's silhouettes through the glass on the side. Fuck, this guy's really peeing here? Xiaofu's eyes were wide open. He couldn't help but sigh at Lin Yi's stupidity. Why did it seem like he wasn't afraid of anything? Leave it to me. Pin Liang cackled as he ran towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi had kicked him in the butt yesterday, and he was going to pay him back today. People who were peeing were most afraid of being disturbed by the outside world. If they were interrupted right now, they'd be scared out of their wits, and in the worst case, they'd get sick. One had to admit that Pin Liang was quite a sinister person. He'd chosen this moment to kick Lin Yi. Not only would he be able to send Lin Yi flying into the urinal, but he'd also be able to scare Lin Yi out of his wits. Pin Liang was so happy that his mouth was crooked. He tiptoed towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi had seen Pin Liang's actions from the reflection of the glass window. He found it funny. When Pin Liang was behind him, Lin Yi turned around abruptly, clenched his teeth, and sprayed a stream of urine at Pin Liang. Pin Liang panicked. His plan was ruined by Lin Yi in an instant. He quickly dodged to the back. But how could Pin Liang compare to the speed at which he peed like a water gun? At the same time, Pin Liang felt like it was raining on his face, wet from the spray. The worst part was that he'd open his mouth wide when he screamed, and now he'd drunk a mouthful of Lin Yi's urine. Pin Liang struggled to dodge, but his foot stepped on Lin Yi's urine. He slipped and fell flat on his back. Chapter 24. Impure, the two tiptoed their way to the men's washroom, hoping to see the fight between Lin Yi and Pin Liang. They didn't expect to see Lin Yi shooting at Pin Liang with a water gun the moment they peeked their heads out. Meng Yao was going crazy. What the hell was going on? Didn't Pin Liang say that no one was going to the washroom at this hour? What was Lin Yi doing then? Meng Yao covered her eyes with her hands. Pervert! She cursed before running away. Yushu, on the other hand, screamed as well but didn't cover her eyes. She took a few more glances before running off with Meng Yao, mumbling to herself as she ran. Men are just like what the books say. They can be big or small, but they can also be big or small. They looked so big this morning, but now they're so much smaller. So weird. Shu, what are you talking about? Meng Yao heard Yushu talking to herself and asked, not understanding what she was saying, nothing. Yushu blushed. She'd be so embarrassed if Meng Yao had heard what she said. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to break down. Meng Yao ran back to the classroom, panting heavily. How could he do that? How could he show such a disgusting thing in front of me? I'm done. I'm done for. I'm impure now. Yushu curled her lips. Wouldn't she be a slut if she looked at him once? Wouldn't she be considered a slut if she looked at him twice? She wouldn't die if she looked, but Lin Yi was the unlucky one. Yushu tried to calm Meng Yao down. Yao, that's the men's washroom. All right? We were the ones who peeked. Meng Yao thought about it. She was right. Peeing in the men's washroom wasn't a problem. But it wasn't right for her to peek. Meng Yao frowned as she remembered something. Right? You're the one who dragged me there. I didn't. Didn't Pin Liang say that no one was going to the washroom at this hour? Yushu naturally pushed the blame onto Pin Liang. Geez. Meng Yao sighed. She had no choice but to accept her bad luck. She'd never seen anything like that in her life, but there was nothing she could do about it. She'd drunk the drink Lin Yi had drunk from yesterday, and she couldn't blame anyone else. But no matter what, he was determined to kick Lin Yi out of the door. Her life had been pretty peaceful, but ever since this guy showed up, everything had changed. It had only been 2 days, but she was already no longer pure. Not only had she lost her first kiss, but she had also seen something that shouldn't be seen. If he was allowed to stay at home for 2 months, who knew what would happen? Meng Yao had made up her mind. She talked to her father personally when he came back from his business trip. Even if she had to compensate this bastard for the termination fee, she couldn't let him stay by her side. It was too dangerous. Pin Liang's scream didn't affect Lin Yi at all, but Meng Yao and Yushu's screams, on the other hand, gave Lin Yi a huge fright. What the hell were these 2 girls doing in the men's washroom? Lin Yi frowned at the thought. They were screaming when he went to the washroom? They didn't look like a peeping Tom at all. Peeping was important. If you scared the person you were peeping on, then it wouldn't be called peeping anymore. Lin pulled up his pants and walked to the door. Don't go. Naipeo and Xiaofu blocked Lin Yi's way. Your boss is already like that. I'd advise you guys to get him a change of clothes. He'll lose all his face when the students come back from their exercise break. Lin Yi said with a wry smile as he looked at the moaning Pinliang in the river of urine. Pinliang's butt was already swollen, and now that he'd fallen flat on his back, the force landed on his butt. It was so painful that he couldn't even stand up. Xiaofu was in a difficult position. Lin Yi's words made sense. After all, reputation was more important than anything else in this school, and if someone were to see Pinliang come out of the toilet covered in piss, he'd become a laughingstock for the rest of his life. Humph, this isn't over yet. Naipeo thought that now wasn't the time to mess with Lin Yi. He'd have plenty of chances to deal with him in the future. Just you wait. Whatever. Lin Yi shrugged nonchalantly as he walked out of the washroom. What the hell are you two doing? Hurry up and help me up. Pinliang didn't think much of it at first, but Lin Yi's words scared him. He couldn't afford to lose face like this. Liang bro, you're... Naipeo looked at the wet Pinliang, feeling disgusted. It wasn't water, it was urine. Asking him to help Pinliang up was the same as getting a hand full of urine. Xiaofu had the same thought as well. He reached out his hand a few times, only to stop there. What? You think it's dirty? Pinliang frowned as he reached out his hand, a little pissed off. He grabbed both Naipeo and Xiaofu, and the two of them were covered in urine. They had no choice but to help Pinliang up with a bitter smile on their faces. But going back to class wasn't an option now, so they'd have to find a place to take a shower and get a change of clothes. The three of them left the school through the back door. Pinliang was pissed off at the feeling of going for wool and coming home shorn. He swore to himself that he'd teach this country bumpkin a lesson he'd never forget. Not for anything else, but for exposing his dick in front of Meng Yao. That was something he couldn't allow. It was like his woman being humiliated by another man. Meng Yao wasn't his woman yet, but Pinliang believed that day wouldn't be too far away. With his family background and his strength, Meng Yao would definitely fall for him. Pinliang felt a little better at the thought. The exercise break wasn't over yet when Lin Yi returned to class. Back in the mountains, Lin Yi heard of the term exercise break for the first time. His first reaction was that it couldn't be, right? As expected of a big city. Did all the students in the school do that kind of thing in between classes? Moreover, the school had also set up exercise break time justifiably. But Lin Yi realized later that he'd misunderstood. The so-called exercise break was just gymnastics in the field between classes. It was obvious that Lin Yi didn't have the simplicity of the people from the mountains. Instead, he was more erotic. Chapter 25. Worst friend, Yao Yao, look, I won. Yushu said to Meng Yao as soon as she saw Lin Yi. What do you mean you won? Meng Yao asked, confused. I bet Lin Yi would win. Yushu said, blushing as she looked at Lin Yi. She was bolder than Meng Yao, but she couldn't help but blush at the thought of what she'd just seen. Meng Yao didn't say anything, evidently still in shock. I didn't win. They just went to change their clothes. Lin Yi said before returning to his seat. He felt a little embarrassed today, letting the two girls see his dick. That was his treasure, something only his future wife could see. And yet they'd let them see it in advance. Pinliang didn't show up for the rest of the morning, and Xiaofu and Naipeo were nowhere to be seen as well. It seemed that the three of them had to go shower and buy some clothes. During lunch break, a guy with glasses sitting in front of Lin Yi turned around. Hey, bro, where are we having lunch? I don't know. Does the school have a cafeteria? Lin Yi was just worrying about where to eat lunch when someone came to talk to him out of kindness. Lin Yi quickly asked, Yeah, I'll take you there. The guy with glasses offered his hand in a friendly manner. Let's get to know each other. I'm Kong Xiaobo. Lin Yi, Nice to meet you, Lin Yi said as he shook Kong Xiaobo's hand. Meng Yao and Yu Shu were nowhere to be seen after class, but Lin Yi didn't have to worry about them. No one could hurt them in school. The two walked out of the classroom shoulder to shoulder. Kong Xiaobo was quite the talker. Bro, which school were you from? I'm from the mountains. Lin Yi didn't hide his past at all. I don't think I've gone to school, officially. It's very poor there, and there aren't any proper schools. Ah, then your results must be very good. Kong Xiaobo looked at Lin Yi in surprise. One should know that there were only two kinds of students who could enter number 1 middle school. One was those who entered with high prices, and the other were those who entered with high scores. Needless to say, as long as they were willing to spend money, the school would definitely accept them. There were also a few types of students who entered with high scores. The most outstanding one was the one who was exempted from tuition and fees and had a scholarship of 1,000 yuan every month. Since Lin Yi said that his hometown was very poor and didn't even have a proper school, then it must be a very poor and backward place. Looking at Lin Yi's attire and tone, it didn't seem like he had a powerful background. It was even more impossible for him to have spent money to get in. The only possibility left was that he got in based on his results. Just so. Lin Yi said with a wry smile. He couldn't explain too much about his identity, so he just let Kong Xiaobo think whatever he wanted. Ha, brother, you are too humble. Kong Xiaobo also got in to know 1 middle school, and in his heart he looked down on students like Pin Liang, who spent money to pass time. Seeing that Lin Yi also got in based on his results, he had a good impression of him. The two walked to the cafeteria together. Along the way, there were young and beautiful girls everywhere, dazzling Lin Yi's eyes. Brother, I didn't know you liked this. Kong Xiaobo saw Lin Yi's gaze sweeping around, and he smiled slyly. He whispered, but let me tell you, there are only a few girls in our school that can be considered top quality. What top quality? Lin Yi asked, stunned. Although he glanced at the girls in the school, he was mostly looking at the school's facilities and environment. Hey, brother, don't pretend to be pure. Kong Xiaobo patted Lin Yi's shoulder and said, at our age, it's normal to have thoughts about pretty girls, but you can look and fantasize about them. But if you really go after them, I'm afraid you will only get rejected. Lin Yi heard Kong Xiaobo's words and smiled bitterly. So this guy was a wolf. He looked gentle and wore glasses, but it turned out that he was a man who was cold on the outside. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't say anything, Kong Xiaobo thought that Lin Yi wasn't convinced, so he continued, I say, brother, don't be upset. Actually, good grades aren't everything these days. Of course, this is also one of the reasons. Girls like handsome men. And the most important thing is that they have money in their pockets. Us don't even think about it. Ha ha, this theory of yours is quite interesting. Lin Yi laughed, but in his heart he didn't think much of it. For girls like Meng Yao and Yu Shu, money didn't mean anything to them. Otherwise, with Pin Liang's family background, how could he not be able to get them? Of course, but just having a theory is useless. The top quality girls in our school have high standards. Kong Xiaobo shook his head. What top quality? Who are they? Lin Yi started to gossip after listening. He had nothing to do anyway. And since this Kong Xiaobo wanted to get close to him, it wouldn't be bad to have another friend in school. Ha, I say, brother, are you serious? Didn't you see? In our class, there are 2 of them. Kong Xiaobo said proudly. Although the beauties had nothing to do with him, they were still in the same class. It was enough to make people jealous. Not for anything else, just for the eye candy. You're not talking about Meng Yao and Yu Shu, are you? Lin Yi only knew the names of these 2 girls. He'd seen Meng Yao's profile back then, and knew that she was the school beauty. Her best friend Yu Shu, on the other hand, was 1 in a million. Fuck, no way. Bro, you've only been here for 1 morning, and you already know their names? Kong Xiaobo's mouth formed an O shape, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. Looking at Kong Xiaobo's expression, Lin Yi knew that he must have misunderstood, but Lin Yi couldn't explain his relationship with Meng Yao. He had no choice but to accept the title of pervert. You don't have to look like that. Actually, I'm sure that 80% of the boys in our class have their dream girls. Kong Xiaobo smiled and pushed up his faded gold-rimmed glasses. But the only one who dares to go after them is Zhong Pinliang. Zhong Pinliang's family is very rich, right? Lin Yi knew that the grudge between him and Zhong Pinliang was already set in stone. As long as he was protecting Meng Yao, the grudge would never be resolved unless Zhong Pinliang gave up on Meng Yao. So, Lin Yi planned to learn more about Zhong Pinliang from Kong Xiaobo. Chapter 26. Chapter 26. Commoner Lin Yi nodded. So, he was an entertainment tycoon, someone who relied on nightclubs and karaoke to make a name for himself. He couldn't say all of them, but a lot of them had a shady background. But that was understandable. After all, there were all sorts of people who came looking for trouble. It was impossible to run a business without a strong background. Looks like his family's pretty big in the city. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of Pinliang at all. As far as he was concerned, mafia bosses and corporate CEOs weren't as scary as his old man. Old Lin would beat him to death if he pissed him off, and he wouldn't be able to defend himself at all. His family's nothing. Kong Xiaobo curled his lips in disdain. It was obvious that he didn't like Pinliang at all. If we're talking about money, Meng Yao's family's the real deal. Pinliang's family only has a couple of entertainment businesses in the city, but House Chu's is the real deal. They have a lot of branches in the country. Lin Yi had a rough understanding of Pengzhan's power. If Pengzhan Industries was an aircraft carrier, then House Xiong's businesses were small boats. It was only natural that Meng Yao didn't care about a nouveau riche like Pinliang. Looks like you know a lot. Lin Yi smiled. Kong Xiaobo's face reddened as he said, awkwardly, how many boys in our school don't know about Meng Yao's background? Yushu, on the other hand, is a little more mysterious. How so? Lin Yi was curious. Lin Yi had never met Yushu's family before, but he could tell that Yushu was picked up by Meng Yao's family car every day, and even ate at Meng Yao's house after school. It made Lin Yi feel like Yushu was borrowing Meng Yao's fame, but Kong Xiaobo's words made it seem like that wasn't the case. I heard that Yushu's grandfather was an elder during the liberation period, and her brother was a major general in the army. Back in the first year of high school, there was a boy who used his family background to chase after Yushu. So he tried some dirty tricks. Yushu's brother found out about it and beat the boy up, sending him to the hospital for half a year. The boy's family didn't even dare say a word, and even went to the Qin house to apologize, Kong Xiaobo said mysteriously. From this, you can see how powerful Yushu's background is. Yushu, on the other hand, doesn't take the initiative to cause trouble. There are a lot of people who like her, but they don't dare confess. Lin Yi thought to himself, this is called not causing trouble. She doesn't cause trouble, but she always provokes me. Not only did she have a handle on him, but she even saw that part of him. What the hell was going on? Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Lin Yi wasn't afraid that Yushu's brother would cause trouble for him. He knew Yushu's personality well, and the girls seemed to be a lot more open-minded than Meng Yao. She wouldn't harp on things like this, but Meng Yao, she probably hated him even more now, didn't she? Sometimes, Lin Yi would rather be Yushu's study companion than Meng Yao. The miss was really hard to please. Lin Yi, you're not falling for them, are you? Kong Xiaobo patted Lin Yi's shoulder when he saw that Lin Yi wasn't saying anything. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, shaking his head. How could I? I've never thought about that. Wasn't this asking him to steal from the miss? It made Lin Yi feel a sense of guilt, as if he was a servant in ancient times trying to steal from the miss. But bro, if you really want to chase after them, there's another candidate. Kong Xiaobo whispered mysteriously. Who? Lin Yi asked casually, not because he cared, but because he wanted to know more about the school, through Kong Xiaobo's mouth. Tang Yun from 12th grade, class 9. Kong Xiaobo cleared his throat. Our school's poor school beauty. She's pretty, but just like us, her family isn't that well off. She wears her school uniform every day, and she doesn't dress up, but that doesn't hide her beauty. Tang Yun? Lin Yi was taken aback. It was a pretty name, but he didn't know if she was as pretty as Kong Xiaobo said. Of course, compared to the two princesses, Meng Yao and Yushu, Tang Yun doesn't stand out that much. Kong Xiaobo's voice was a little rushed and excited when he mentioned Tang Yun, but compared to them, she's closer to us. In a school like No. 1 Middle School, there were children of the rich and the poor. Unknowingly, they were divided into two factions. Some rich young masters gathered together and chased after beauties all day long, playing games with life. After graduation, they could use their money and family connections to get into their ideal university or even study abroad. Poor kids, on the other hand, had to work hard every day to get into their ideal university. Most of the poor students were dismissive of the idle, rich second generation, and these rich second generation would also be dismissive of the nerds who only knew how to study all day long. But this wasn't absolute. There were rich kids who studied hard, and there were poor kids who fought in the underworld. But birds of a feather flocked together. Pinliang's lackeys were all from rich families and government officials just like him. As a result, to Kong Xiaobo, chasing after Meng Yao and Yushu was just an unattainable dream. Tang Yun, the commoner school beauty, was the one they could reach out to. Lin Yi sighed as he looked at Kong Xiaobo's hopeful smile. The school wasn't as simple as he'd imagined it to be. It was full of interests and conflicts. You like her? Lin Yi smiled. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I can guarantee that most of the boys in this school have wet dreams of Tang Yun, Kong Xiaobo said with certainty. Bro, you'll know when you see her. Chase after the commoner school beauty. It was a tempting suggestion, but Lin Yi shook his head in the end. He was a study boy now. How could he leave the miss behind to find a boyfriend? Even if Pingzhan didn't say anything, old Lin wouldn't let him go just like that. One shouldn't be too much of a jerk. It was better to keep a low profile. Plus, the situation wasn't clear yet. He didn't know what Pingzhan was planning. He couldn't be thinking of using his job to steal the miss, could he? Now that he thought about it, it was quite possible. He wasn't related to the miss at all. So this was the only way he could give her love. What if he went after some commoner school beauty and Pengzhan found out? What if he was fired? Chapter 27. Third year afternoon, the school cafeteria was huge with 3 floors. The first floor was the general cafeteria, the kind that looked like a fast food restaurant. There were stalls selling all sorts of dishes around the cafeteria, and in the middle were rows of tables and chairs. The second floor, on the other hand, was a private room suitable for rich students. Students who didn't come from rich families would come here for birthday parties as well. The food on the second floor was on a completely different level compared to the first floor. After all, the third floor was the staff cafeteria. The food was similar to the students' cafeteria on the first floor, but with a more elegant ambience. Naturally, students weren't allowed to eat there. Lin Yi followed Kong Xiaobo into the cafeteria, and Kong Xiaobo pointed to an office on the right. Get a meal card there. Oh, I'll get one right away. Lin Yi nodded. Pengzhan and Faubert hadn't given him a meal card or library card back then, but it was obvious that he could get one at any time in school, as long as he showed his student ID. What? Are you looking down on me? Kong Xiaobo wasn't pleased that Lin Yi was going to get a card. Today's the first day we've met, and it's my turf. Of course it's my treat. Lin Yi gave up on the idea of getting a card right away after hearing Kong Xiaobo's words. All right, we'll get one after we eat. All right, I'll go with you after we eat, Kong Xiaobo said happily as he led Lin Yi through the small windows of the cafeteria. There were quite a lot of dishes on display, including vegetables and meat as well as a few staples. There were also buns, dumplings, pies, and the like. Lin Yi ordered some tomatoes and rice, while Kong Xiaobo ordered a plate of shredded pork and steamed buns, spending a total of 11 kuai. It wasn't much, and it wasn't much at all. It was considered average spending. Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo found a place to sit down and put the two dishes together so that they could take turns to eat. After sitting down, Lin Yi scanned the entire cafeteria. Yushu and Meng Yao weren't here, evidently having gone to the second floor. "What are you looking at? Are you looking at pretty girls?" Kong Xiaobo smiled. "Yushu and Meng Yao are upstairs. They won't be eating with us, but if we're lucky, we might be able to meet Tang Yun." "Really?" Lin Yi only cared about Meng Yao's whereabouts. He didn't care whether Tang Yun would appear here or not. But Tang Yun's family doesn't seem to be doing well. Most of the time, they only bring food. Kong Xiaobo sighed. Actually, with Tang Yun's status, just a word from her, and there would be countless boys fighting to treat her to a meal. It's not impossible for her to eat in the second floor every day. "Ha! Ambitious girls won't care about these things," Lin Yi said faintly. "You're right. Tang Yun has never cared about these things." "It's rare to find a girl like her," Kong Xiaobo agreed. "But the more she is like this, the more boys will like her. This kind of girl who doesn't like to be greedy is exactly what we students like." Unfortunately, Tang Yun didn't appear even after lunch. Lin Yi didn't mind, but Kong Xiaobo felt slightly regretful. Many students were like Kong Xiaobo, coming here every day to eat, hoping to see Tang Yun. It had become a kind of expectation. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, were walking down from the second floor arm in arm, attracting a lot of attention from the boys. But to most of the people here, they were princesses high up in the sky, unreachable. Many boys didn't even dare to look at them directly. Lin Yi watched the two walk out of the school cafeteria and went to the management office with Kong Xiaobo. "Lin Yi, you were staring at Yushu and Yushu just now, right?" Kong Xiaobo asked. "I was just looking." Lin Yi was a little embarrassed. "Ah, you'll understand in a few days. They are not our princesses. Tang Yun is." Kong Xiaobo looked at Lin Yi sympathetically. "But when he first entered the school, didn't he also have a crush on Yushu and Meng Yao? But as he grew older, he understood the difference between them. Everyone was equal. It was a beautiful fantasy. As long as one was slightly more mature, they would understand that there was never equality between people. Wine and meat went bad in the rich, and there were frozen bones on the road. This wasn't a joke, it was a fact. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, had a beautiful life. Their princess-like life wasn't something a normal boy like him could enter. So, although many people in the class knew that Meng Yao didn't like Zhong Pingliang, they also knew that Zhong Pingliang was the only one in the class who had the right to pursue Meng Yao. The card application process was quite smooth. After all, it was to give money to the school. Although the cafeteria manager said that it wasn't making money, no one would believe that. Lin Yi showed his student ID and deposited 200 kuai into the cafeteria, getting his food card with ease. On the way out, Kong Xiaobo complained, "Bro, why did you save so much money?" "I'm eating? What's wrong?" Lin Yi didn't understand. When he was saving money, Kong Xiaobo kept giving him looks. He didn't know what the kid was trying to do. The cafeteria. When you give him money, he'll greet you with a smile. When you stop eating and want your money back, just you wait. We're all 12th graders. Who knows how long we can eat here? You saved so much money at once, and when you graduate, you'll be asking for your money back every day. You don't have the time. Kong Xiaobo said, blaming Lin Yi. "Haha, I see. It's fine. It's only 200 kuai. Look at us. We only spend 10 kuai a day. That 200 kuai will be gone in a month or so." Lin Yi smiled carelessly. "If you don't want your money back, then don't. Worst comes to worst, we won't eat for a day and just eat here. You're quite open-minded." Kong Xiaobo praised. If it weren't for the fact that the restaurants outside the school are more expensive, I wouldn't eat in this cafeteria. It's good enough that there's food. Lin Yi wasn't picky, although the food in this cafeteria wasn't as good as the chef Faubert sent yesterday. It was much better than Widow Wang's snack shop at the entrance of the village. When he returned to the classroom, he realized that most of the students didn't go out to play. The 12th grade was precious and tense. This was a watershed in life. If you worked hard, you might get into a top university in the future. If you were careless, you might fail. Chapter 28. Chapter 28. Yushu's brother Mingyao and Yushu didn't go out either. They were huddled together, watching an MP4 movie called The Happy Goat and Big Big Wolf. It was a very childish movie to Lin Yi, but the two of them were enjoying it, laughing from time to time. Naturally, the boys in the class weren't offended at all. In fact, they found the two's laughter to be music from heaven, adding a hint of color to their boring lives. The girls, on the other hand, didn't feel the same way. Some were jealous, some looked down on them, some even disdainful. Of course, there were also those who didn't think much of it. But no matter what, Meng Yao and Yushu's outstanding temperament was still envied by most of them. He went back to his seat, and Yushu, who'd been playing with her MP4, raised her head to glance at him before turning back to her cartoon. Kong Xiaobo, on the other hand, started doing his exercises quietly. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was flipping through his 12th grade textbook board. Before the first afternoon class, Pin Liang came back with a change of clothes. Xiaofu and Nai Peo were with him as well. Their hair wasn't too dry yet. Evidently, they'd just showered. Pin Liang shot a hateful glare at Lin Yi as he entered the classroom, but didn't say anything as he returned to his seat. Pin Liang had lost all his face today, especially in front of the girl he loved the most. This was the biggest humiliation he'd ever suffered in his life, especially in front of the girl he loved the most. He wouldn't let Lin Yi get away with this. He swore to himself. He didn't do anything to Lin Yi now, not because he was patient, but because there were only 10 minutes left before class started. The first class was the homeroom teacher Lu's class, and he didn't want to cause trouble right now. He planned to cause trouble for Lin Yi during the self-study period. Yushu couldn't help but think of how Lin Yi had poured his pee all over his head when she looked at him. She couldn't help but chuckle at the memory of how Lin Yi had peed on him, though, and blushed a little. Pin Liang, naturally, heard Yushu's mockery as well. He'd have slapped the guy if it were anyone else, but he didn't dare do that to Yushu. Others might not know, but Pin Liang knew Yushu's background very well. He knew that Wu Xiaokan from last year's 12th grade. He'd been chasing after Yushu since the beginning of the first year, and it was only after Yushu rejected him a couple of times that Wu Xiaosan's mind started to wander. One time, Wu Xiaokan sat next to Yushu during a movie organized by the school. He'd wanted to make a move on Yushu, but he'd failed and ended up getting slapped twice in the face by Yushu. After that, Wu Xiaokan had announced to the school that he'd dumped Yushu and that he'd gotten bored of her. He'd even said nasty things about how Yushu had aborted her child because of him. Of course, most people understood that Wu Xiaokan was just saying that the grapes were sour. They listened to his words for the time being, but did not believe him. But while no one believed Wu Xiaosan's words, he pushed Yushu into the limelight for a while. Yushu, of course, had never taken something like that. She'd argued with Wu Xiaokan, even slapped him a couple of times in front of everyone. Wu Xiaokan had told her to be careful after school, that he'd find someone to gang rape her. Yushu's brother, Chen Yuming, found out about it later. It was a winter afternoon. Pin Liang couldn't forget that scene no matter how hard he tried. A Land Rover had stopped in front of the school, and a tall, burly guy got out of the car and went straight to Wu Xiaokan, who was playing soccer in the field. Wu Xiaokan hadn't realized anything at the time, and he'd said to Chen Yuming, "Who the hell do you think you are? Aren't you just a stupid soldier?" Who was he trying to scare? Let me tell you, no matter how good you are at fighting, we're all here. Chun Yuming only said one sentence: go to the school radio station and apologize to Yushu, and we'll forget about it. Wu Xiaoqin laughed, laughing wildly. He'd never heard such a ridiculous joke before, and his lackeys laughed along with him. Chun Yuming frowned and kicked Wu Xiaocan's lower abdomen, causing him to tumble. Then he raised his fist and smashed it on Wu Xiaocan's body. Immediately, the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Wu Xiaocan's lackeys were dumbfounded. They'd fought before, but they'd never seen someone break bones right off the bat. He wasn't on the same level as them at all. Chun Yuming was truly infuriated. Yushu had been the apple of his eye since she was young, and he'd never let her suffer even a little. Not only did this Wu Xiaoqin do something to his sister, he even spread rumors and insulted her, even threatening her. Chun Yuming couldn't take it anymore. At that time, Zhong Pingliang was also one of Wu Xiaocan's lackeys. He stood in the middle of the group and watched Wu Xiaoqin howl like a pig being slaughtered. He was completely shocked. This miserable scene even caused him to be awakened by nightmares for the next few days. Wu Xiaocan's family was also very powerful, or else he wouldn't have been so pretentious. However, after learning that the person who beat him up was a major general, he was a little dispirited. No matter how powerful you were in the local area, you couldn't control the matters of the military. Although it reflected on Chun Yuming's troops, and Chun Yuming was punished, it didn't hurt any of their muscles. This was only Chun Yuming's own background. Later, Wu Xiaocan's family found out about Yushu and Chun Yuming's parents' background, as well as Elder Chun, who was far away in the capital. They immediately felt fear and trepidation. Speaking of which, although their son's behavior seemed to be messing around, it could be considered as intimidation, insult, and slander. A little more serious, it could be considered molestation and molestation. If the Chun family really wanted to mess with you, Wu Xiaocan's life would be over. Fortunately, Chun Yuming was a magnanimous person. After the Wu family came to apologize with gifts, Chun Yuming said that he wouldn't pursue the matter. At the same time, he also said that Wu Xiaoqin being in school wasn't good for his sister's physical and mental health. The Wu family weren't idiots. They immediately understood Chun Yuming's meaning. The next day, they handled the transfer procedures for Wu Xiaoqin, and thus the storm ended. Not many people knew about this, but Zhong Pingliang happened to be one of them. So, even if he had 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to mess with Yushu. Thinking back to Wu Xiaocan's appearance, Zhong Pingliang couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 29. What's coming has come. The last class of the afternoon was self-study. Pingliang stood up and walked to Lin Yi's side, knocking on Lin Yi's desk twice. "What's up?" Lin Yi raised his head, a hint of impatience in his eyes. Kong Xiaobo turned around as well, looking at Lin Yi and Pingliang curiously. He didn't know how the two had gotten into a grudge, but Pingliang wasn't someone Lin Yi could mess with. "Come with me if you dare," Pingliang said arrogantly. "Sorry, I'm busy. I need to study." Lin Yi lowered his head and continued flipping through his math book. "You're scared just like that? Coward." Pingliang humphed coldly. "You can hide for now, but you can't hide forever. Just you wait for school." With that, he walked back to his seat without looking back. "I say, bro, what did you do to piss off this god?" Kong Xiaobo whispered to Lin Yi. "He's not easy to mess with. Could there be some kind of misunderstanding in between?" Lin Yi smiled bitterly. "Misunderstanding? Why would I get into a grudge with him for no reason? Wasn't it because of Meng Yao? If it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been able to kick Pingliang's butt yesterday." Of course, he couldn't tell this to Kong Xiaobo. "It's nothing this morning. Zhang Naipeo stuck out his leg and wanted me to fall, but I stepped on his foot instead. Maybe it's because of that," Lin Yi said, pushing the matter back to the morning. Xiaobo frowned, shocked. Zhang Naipeo is a very vengeful person. He's a vengeful person. It looks like Pin Liang is here to cause trouble for his brother. It's fine. Let them be. What can they do in school? Lin Yi shrugged nonchalantly. In Lin Yi's eyes, no matter how arrogant Pin Liang was, he was still a student. Thinking back to the time when he was in the flames of war, risking his life in a rain of bullets, an enemy like Zhong Pingliang's level was too childish. Just like today's exercise break, Lin Yi had used a more mischievous method to teach Pin Liang a lesson instead of beating him up. If Lin Yi really wanted to beat someone up, Pin Liang would be lying in the morgue right now. How is it? Kong Xiaobo sighed. Lin Yi had just transferred here, so it was normal that he didn't know much about the school. He explained, Zhong Pingliang and his group are the tyrants of the school. Many students who offended them got beaten up, and some couldn't even come to school for days. So ruthless? Lin Yi didn't think that Pin Liang and the others would be able to beat up people to the point where they couldn't come to school. Yeah, Sai, it's my fault for not telling you earlier, Kong Xiaobo sighed. If you had just said some soft words, this might have been over. But now what? Lin Yi asked, interested. Things are getting difficult now, Kong Xiaobo said, unsatisfied. Fuck, Zhang Naipeo. That bitch, he's just like a milk bubble, vengeful and petty. It was just one thing, and he's in the wrong, but he's still trying to get revenge on Pin Liang. He's a piece of shit. Whatever. Let them do what they want. Don't worry, I'm not that easy to bully. Lin Yi patted Kong Xiaobo's shoulder, telling him not to worry. Kong Xiaobo pouted his lips, wanting to say something, but didn't say anything in the end. What was meant to come would come. Before the last big class, Pin Liang went to find Lin Yi. The big class was also known as night study. Many schools had big classes like this. After school ended at 4:30, there would be a half an hour break, and the big class would start at 5. The class would last for 1.5 hours without any breaks. If you're a man, come with me. Pin Liang's words were even more aggressive than last time. Last time, he only said you have balls, but this time he used if you're a man. Lin Yi was a man, naturally, but he wouldn't be angered by Pin Liang's aggressive tone. But he understood that today's incident would come to an end sooner or later. He could tell that Pin Liang was the type of person who wouldn't let go. Just as he said, you can hide now, but you can't hide forever. Although there was no reason for Lin Yi to hide from him, it was enough to prove that Pin Liang was someone who wouldn't stop until he reached his goal. All right, I'll go with you. Lin Yi nodded and stood up. At this time, many people were still in the classroom. They had noticed Pin Liang when he first came to find Lin Yi, so when he appeared in front of Lin Yi again, he naturally became the focus of the class. However, when Lin Yi agreed to go with Pin Liang, the whole class went into an uproar. Many of them sighed at Lin Yi for not knowing the rules on his first day here. They didn't know how he'd pissed off the school tyrant Pin Liang, but more than that, they sympathized with him. I'll go with you. Kong Xiaobo stood up suddenly as if he had made a big decision, as if he was a soldier going to the execution ground. Kong Xiaobo was struggling in his heart as well. Although it was his first day meeting Lin Yi, he felt like they were kindred spirits. Especially in the boring 12th year of high school, it was rare to have a friend he could talk to. Pin Liang was very powerful in school, and Kong Xiaobo couldn't go against him at all. All he could do was stand aside and see if he could reduce the conflict. Fuck, Kong Xiaobo, are you crazy? Stand up for him? Pin Liang was furious when he saw his classmates standing up for a new transfer outsider. This was a provocation to his authority in the class. Kong Xiaobo was a little timid under Pin Liang's aggressive gaze, but he didn't back down. He raised his head and said, Pin Liang, Lin Yi is a new transfer. He doesn't know the rules, don't bother with him. You motherfucker, you're lecturing me. Who the hell do you think you are? Pin Liang was furious. Didn't know the rules? How could he let it go so easily? He even pissed on himself. Pin Liang was furious when he heard Kong Xiaobo's casual tone. Since you're so willing to stand up for him, you can come too. Fuck, I'm not Pin Liang if I don't kill you today. Xiaobo's expression froze, his body trembling slightly. He'd always been one of the more obedient students since he was young, and while it was in his nature to be a man, he'd never gotten into a fight before. Lin Yi didn't need Kong Xiaobo's help, but he was very touched by Kong Xiaobo's sincerity. He patted Kong Xiaobo's shoulder and said, "No problem. Let's go together." Kong Xiaobo heard Lin Yi's words, and he felt a little more confident. At most, he would just get beaten up together. He puffed his chest out and followed Lin Yi to the class gate. Pin Liang couldn't help but get pissed when he saw Xiaobo's face. A classmate of his was siding with an outsider. He had to teach this traitor a lesson. Chapter 30. Violence Against Violence. Yao Yao. Shield Bro and Pin Liang are at the rooftop. Should we go check it out? Yushu couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer. I'm not going. Meng Yao remembered the blushing scene from this morning, the moment she heard Lin Yi's name. She frowned as she turned back to her English book. She still hadn't memorized the vocabulary for the day. Let's go, Yushu said, her heart itching. We don't have anything to do right now anyway. Go yourself if you want to. I'm not going. Meng Yao humphed. Shu, have you fallen for that country bumpkin? Bullshit. Yushu's face reddened. Who would fall for him? I just want to watch the show. Then go yourself. I'm definitely not going, Meng Yao said firmly. Let's go. Yao Yao. He's your study companion. After all, you have to look at the owner before you beat the dog. What if you hurt Lin Yi? You'd lose face. Yushu continued to persuade Meng Yao, evidently unwilling to give up. Shu, why were you so annoying? Meng Yao couldn't even focus on her book anymore. All right, I'll go with you then. Let's go. Yushu grabbed Meng Yao's hand excitedly, and the two ran towards the rooftop. Hope we don't miss out on the fun. On the rooftop, Pin Liang, Nai Peo, and Xiaofu were all rubbing their palms together with smiles on their faces. Pin Liang put a cigarette in his mouth, but Xiaofu was quick enough to light it up with a lighter. Pin Liang took a long drag of his cigarette and blew the smoke at Lin Yi's face. You motherfucker, aren't you supposed to be strong? Why don't you take out your dick again? Pour it on me again? If it's because of what happened yesterday, then fine. I admit it was my fault, Lin Yi said calmly. But what happened today has nothing to do with me. Huh? Now you admit your mistake? Pin Liang enjoyed the feeling of his opponent lowering his head, but he still said arrogantly, but it's too late. Also, what happened today has nothing to do with you. Are you stupid? You're still being stubborn at a time like this? There are so many empty urinals. What are you doing behind me? I don't think we need to line up, right? Lin Yi said seriously. Don't say that. It's useless even if you apologize. Xiaofu, teach him a lesson. Pin Liang waved his hand at Xiaofu. I'm coming. Gao Xiaofu smiled evilly. He took out a stool leg from behind him and walked toward Lin Yi. Lin Yi felt a little apologetic for kicking Pin Liang out of the blue yesterday. He'd wanted to find a chance to talk to Pin Liang about it, but it seemed like there wasn't a need for that now. He'd have to use violence to deal with people like Pin Liang. Look at you, kid. Who can you piss off? You just had to piss off Liang Bro. You really don't want to live anymore. Xiaofu said as he raised the stool leg and smashed it at Lin Yi. Pin Liang was smoking proudly on the side, feeling very satisfied. Who told you to piss off me? I'll change my surname if I don't beat your head up today. Pin Liang seemed to be imagining the scene of Lin Yi's head splattering blood. He licked his lips in excitement. Smack! Xiaofu swung the stool leg, but Pin Liang didn't see the scene of Lin Yi's blood splattering. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the stool leg was in Lin Yi's hand. Xiaofu frowned and pulled hard at the stool leg, but it wouldn't budge. He panicked and increased his strength. Xiaofu, what the hell are you doing? Pin Liang, on the other hand, didn't know about Xiaofu's predicament. he asked as he watched him and Lin Yi tussle. "Liang bro, this kid's a bit strong," Xiaofu said. "Nai Peo, you go together?" Pin Liang wasn't very happy. He didn't expect this kid to have some skills. Normal students would be scared witless the moment they stepped onto the rooftop. "Lin Yi, watch out," Kong Xiaobo warned when he saw Lin Yi dealing with Xiaofu and Nai Peo charging over with a mop stick. Lin Yi thought that these students were just trying to scare the other party, but he didn't expect them to use weapons like stool legs and mop sticks. It'd be a serious injury if it hit the head. Kong Xiaobo was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't be able to handle it. He braced himself and went over to Nai Peo. Nai Peo didn't expect that Kong Xiaobo, who usually didn't say a word in class, would dare to go against him. He wasn't happy at all, and so he wasn't in a rush to attack Lin Yi. He wanted to take down Kong Xiaobo first. Lin Yi had a rough idea of what Xiaobo was capable of. Too, the way he'd faced the enemy didn't look like someone who got into fights often. The fact that he'd come to the balcony with Lin Yi out of brotherhood was something Lin Yi found very rare. Kong Xiaobo, on the other hand, was scared. He'd never been in a fight before, and he didn't know what to do. He closed his eyes, waved his hands, and charged forward. Nai Peo had never seen someone as stupid as Lin Yi before. Closing his eyes and charging forward? Wasn't that suicide? Nai Peo cackled as he raised the mop stick towards Kong Xiaobo. Lin Yi didn't dare be careless this time. If he didn't go all out, Kong Xiaobo would probably die here today. With that in mind, Lin Yi didn't hold back anymore. He pulled back his hand and pulled hard, causing Xiaofu to stumble. He then sent a kick out, and before Xiaofu knew what was going on, he let go of the stool leg and crouched down, clutching his stomach in pain. Xiaofu's face turned the color of pig liver. He felt like he was going to throw up the barbecue he'd eaten in the afternoon. Kong Xiaobo didn't know what was going on as he charged forward when he felt a sharp gust of wind sweep past him. He opened his eyes to see a mop stick falling from above his head. Kong Xiaobo's heart skipped a beat. It was over. It was over. Kong Xiaobo thought of his mother, who'd been laid off at home, his father working hard in the factory, and his sister working outside. If he were to get hurt, what would he do to pay for the medical bills? Pack. A loud sound rang out, and Kong Xiaobo felt the world spinning around him. It was all over. Arg. A sharp howl rang out, scaring Kong Xiaobo out of his stupor. He touched his head. It seemed like nothing had happened. He opened his eyes, puzzled, and saw Nai Peo clutching his head, twitching on the ground in pain. His forehead was covered in blood. Lin Yi didn't go too far with his punishment. He didn't go for the back of Nai Peo's head or temples, choosing the forehead instead. It was a tough spot, and a stool leg wouldn't do much damage. At most, it would cause some blood and a slight concussion. Chapter 31. Chapter 31. Deep lesson by the time Meng Yao and Yushu got to the rooftop. Lin Yi had already taken care of Gao Xiaofu and Zhang Nai Peo. Yushu was a little disappointed as she looked at the two groaning figures on the ground. She'd missed out on something as spectacular as this despite her haste. "Yao Yao, Lin Yi's pretty strong," Yushu said to Meng Yao. "What does that have to do with me?" Meng Yao was a little shaken. As well, if Lin Yi's kick yesterday was considered a sneak attack, and today's in the washroom was considered a shameless act, then what he was doing now was a display of his true strength. Meng Yao knew Kong Xiaobo's personality very well. She'd never spoken to him before, but boys like him were the cowardly type who'd hide far away from fights. Lin Yi was the only one fighting alone now. He looked at Nai Peo and Xiaofu on the ground. Both of them were moaning as they clutched at a certain part of their body. This meant that Lin Yi had only used one move to take them down. "He's more than qualified to be your shield. I'm sure that after what happened today, Lin Yi's name will be very famous in the school. Who dare come near you then?" Yushu said with a smile. Meng Yao humphed but didn't say anything. Lin Yi patted Kong Xiaobo's shoulder after taking down Gao Xiaofu and Zhang Nai Peo. "Are you all right?" "Ha ha." I'm fine. Xiaobo snapped out of his stupor. He didn't expect Lin Yi to be this strong, taking down two of Pinliang's generals in just 2 moves. He really was a master in disguise. Bro, you're amazing. Pinliang, I didn't want to do this, but you forced my hand. I had no choice. Lin Yi walked up to Pinliang innocently. Pinliang naturally wasn't scared. Lin Yi was strong, but he'd seen that it was just a trick. He'd kicked Gao Xiaofu when he wasn't paying attention, snatched the stool leg from his hands, and kicked it at Naipeo when he wasn't paying attention. As such, Pinliang didn't think that Lin Yi was that strong. He thought that he'd gotten lucky. Pinliang reached out, and a dagger appeared in his hand, calming him down a little. Lin Yi, don't say useless things. If I don't kill you today, I won't be able to live in this school anymore. With that, Pinliang pulled out his dagger and stabbed at Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't think that Pinliang would go to such extreme. The kid didn't think about the consequences at all. If a murder happened in school, his family wouldn't be able to get away with it no matter how powerful they were. Lin Yi decided to teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. If he wasn't the one standing here today, he'd be the one getting stabbed. When Pinliang's dagger came at him, Lin Yi grabbed his wrist. Pinliang was on the brink of insanity. He kept twisting his body after Lin Yi grabbed his wrist, trying to stab the dagger into Lin Yi's body as he screamed. Lin Yi, Aleph asterisk king kill you. Yushu couldn't help but cover her mouth when Pinliang charged at her. She knew what Pinliang was capable of, and she didn't know if Lin Yi could dodge the attack. She wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. But when Lin Yi grabbed Pinliang's wrist, Yushu let out a sigh of relief. Meng Yao, who was beside her, seemed to have let out a sigh of relief as well. Lin Yi increased the strength in his grip, and Pinliang felt as if his wrist was being clamped down by a pair of iron pincers. It was getting tighter and tighter, and the pain made his entire arm tremble. He opened his palm subconsciously, and the dagger fell to the roof with a clatter. Lin Yi grabbed the shocked Pinliang by his hair and roughly dragged him to the edge of the roof. With a strong push, he pushed half of Pinliang's body off the roof. Ah! Pinliang screamed as he felt his body falling down, cold sweat forming on his forehead. For the first time in his life, the fear of death shrouded his heart. He didn't want to die. Pinliang only let out a sigh of relief when half of his body was hanging off the roof. His lower body wasn't thrown off the roof, but even so, he could feel his entire body drenched in cold sweat. Lin Yi pushed Pinliang's legs forward again, and Pinliang shuddered. He couldn't care less about his face anymore, and started crying. Lin Yi, I'm wrong. Let me go. Don't throw me down. I'm wrong. I'm really wrong. Lin Yi didn't say anything as he pushed Pinliang's legs forward again. Lin Yi bro, I'm begging you, let me go. I won't do it again. I won't mess with you anymore. Pinliang's voice wasn't even normal, his body shaking nonstop. I kicked you yesterday. I admit it's my fault, Lin Yi said faintly. Lin bro, you were right, it's my fault. You can kick me if you want. Pinliang was scared, out of his wits. I said it's my fault. I'm not a person who likes to bully others. Lin Yi's voice was cold as he let go of Pinliang's leg. Pinliang didn't expect Lin Yi to let go just like that, and started screaming. He felt like his life had come to an end. But after screaming for a long time, Pinliang realized that he was still hanging in midair, and hadn't fallen. Pinliang felt a warm current between his legs, and he peed his pants. All right, you were wrong yesterday, but I forgive you. It's fine. Pinliang didn't dare say anything else this time, and only dared to follow Lin Yi's instructions. I hope you remember what you said today. Lin Yi suddenly pulled Pinliang back from the rooftop and threw him on the ground. Pinliang felt like he'd just walked through the gates of hell, and his body was drenched as if it had just rained. It was a piece of cake for Lin Yi to kill Pinliang, but he knew that this was a school, not the war-torn North Africa. He couldn't kill Pinliang, at least not in a public place like this. Let's go. Lin Yi smiled at Kong Xiaobo. Fuck, Lin Yi. Aren't you a little too much? I can't believe she made Pin Liang submit. Kong Xiaobo didn't expect Lin Yi to be so ruthless, and his admiration for him flowed like the Yangtze River. I, Kong Xiaobo, have decided that I'll follow you from now on. You're my boss from now on. Don't be so impulsive next time. Fighting isn't a good thing. It's okay to be brave, but don't rush in blindly. Lin Yi smiled. Chapter 32. He did it himself, HM? Lin Yi blinked, raising his head to look at the balcony's entrance. Who else could it be if not Meng Yao and Yushu? Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't think that Meng Yao and Yushu would have a crush on him or whatsoever. He could guess that they were here because Yushu wanted to join in the fun and dragged Meng Yao along. Just watching the show, Lin Yi said nonchalantly, "Why do I get the feeling that it's Meng Yao and Yushu from our class?" Kong Xiaobo, on the other hand, was getting a little excited. "Boss, don't tell me you've gotten two beauties to you? You're thinking too much." Lin Yi said helplessly as he patted Kong Xiaobo on the back of his head. "I should have let Nai Peo hit you in the head to wake you up if I'd known you were this talkative." Ha ha. Kong Xiaobo laughed heartily. Kong Xiaobo had spent 3 years in high school, 3 years of being a coward. Who would have thought that he'd be this cocky right before his graduation? Kong Xiaobo felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction as he looked at the 3 school tyrants on the ground. "Liang bro, are you all right?" Xiaofu's injuries weren't that bad, and his stomach wasn't hurting as much anymore. He ran to Pin Liang's side after Lin Yi left, helping him up. "I'm fine," Pin Liang said, his face pale. He didn't seem to be lying. "What do we do, Liang bro? Are we just going to let it go like that?" Xiaofu asked, very upset. "Mother Asterisk Kerr, I've suffered a huge setback today." Pin Liang cursed fiercely. "I didn't think the kid had some tricks up his sleeve. I almost fell for it." "It's all my fault." Xiaofu quickly apologized when he saw the unfriendly look on Pin Liang's face. He didn't want Pin Liang to vent his anger on him. "It's not your fault." Pin Liang waved his hand. He'd been tormented quite badly by Lin Yi himself and couldn't blame anyone else. All he could say was that they weren't a match for Lin Yi. "The 3 of us aren't a match for that kid. We'll have to ask for help if we want to teach him a lesson. Why don't we talk to Zhou Ruoming and ask him to show up?" Gao Xiaofu suggested. "If we don't look for him, we'll lose face if he finds out about this. We won't be able to stay in school anymore." Pin Liang said with a wave of his hand. "I'll go to my dad's place." Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo returned to the classroom safely, and the students who'd been worried about them breathed a sigh of relief. Most of the students still hated Pin Liang's arrogance, but there were a few who were happy to see that Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo were fine. What confused them, however, was that Pin Liang, Xiaofu, and Nai Peo didn't return to the classroom at all. They were nowhere to be seen, even when the class started. This meant that something was wrong. Pin Liang didn't want Zhou Ruoming to know about this, but he still bumped into Zhou Ruoming on the field. Xiaofu held on to Nai Peo as they followed behind Pin Liang, the 3 of them looking like soldiers who'd just lost a battle, stumbling as they walked. "Pin Liang, what's wrong with you guys?" Zhou Ruoming was playing basketball on the field when he saw the 3 familiar faces. He took a closer look and realized that it was Pin Liang's friends. Pin Liang cursed inwardly at his bad luck. His teeth would get stuck when he was down on his luck. Why did he have to run into him like this? As one of the Big 4, Pin Liang cared a lot about his reputation. Now that another Big 4 had seen him in such a pitiful state, his reputation as a Big 4 would be ruined if word got out. "It's nothing." Pin Liang didn't want to say too much. He waved his hand and quickened his pace. "I say, Liang, did someone beat you guys up? Who did it? Tell me, Ming bro, I'll fix them for you." Zhou Ruoming could tell that they'd lost a fight after seeing their sorry state. So he said in a very arrogant manner. Pin Liang, on the other hand, knew what Ruoming was capable of. He was the best fighter out of the big four, and he had dealings with the underworld as well. He was a real gun and knife user. But what happened today was too embarrassing, and Pin Liang didn't want too many people to know about it. He waved his hand. It's nothing, we were just sparring, and we ended up using too much force. Since Pin Liang didn't want to say anything, Zhou Ruoming didn't ask anymore. He watched as the three left, and Zhou Ruoming shook his head. Idiot, hitting your own people? Trying to kill them? I don't believe it. Boss, where do you live? Can we leave together after school? Kong Xiaobo was still in a state of excitement. He admired his new boss from the bottom of his heart. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't let anyone know that he was leaving with Meng Yao tonight. He didn't mind, but Meng Yao wouldn't want it. With that in mind, Lin Yi said, "My house is pretty far. You go first, I'll leave later. Then I'll wait for you. We can walk to the school gate together." Kong Xiaobo said, a little reluctant. He wanted to talk to Lin Yi a little longer. He never thought that Pin Liang would be beaten to the point where he couldn't even get up. Sure. Lin Yi knew that if he kept pushing it away, Kong Xiaobo's suspicions would be aroused. They were walking to the school gate together anyways, and he'd wait until Kong Xiaobo was far away before getting into Falbert's car. Meng Yao and Yushu had already packed up and left the classroom. Lin Yi took advantage of the time difference, and after a while he put on his bag and left the classroom with Kong Xiaobo. "Boss, let me tell you a secret," Kong Xiaobo whispered as they walked out of the classroom. "What secret?" Lin Yi looked at Kong Xiaobo, puzzled. Why was this guy talking so strangely? "I live very close to the commoner beauty Tang Yun's house," Kong Xiaobo said with a perverted smile. "Actually, I often see her riding her bike home." "Fuck!" Lin Yi slapped the back of Kong Xiaobo's head. "Why are you thinking about that? What secret is that? What does living close to your house have to do with me? Are you really not interested in her?" Kong Xiaobo asked, not believing him. "It's not that I'm not interested. It's that I've never seen what she looks like. You want me to be interested in a random person? That's impossible," Lin Yi said, amused. "All right, go back. I'm leaving too." Chapter 33. Chapter 33. Mysterious Jadelin. Yi made sure that Kong Xiaobo was gone before turning to Falbert's car. As expected, Falbert didn't drive the car away, instead waiting for him there quietly. Falbert started the car only after Lin Yi got in. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, were silent in the back seat. Maybe it was because of Lin Yi in the washroom, or maybe it was because of the scene on the rooftop, but neither of them spoke much. Surprisingly, Meng Yao didn't complain to Falbert about Lin Yi either. "Falbert, stop at the bank up ahead. Shoo, and I'll get a bank card," Meng Yao instructed Falbert. Lin Yi only remembered that the school required every student to get a bank card, saying that they'd be able to deduct their tuition and fees from it. Falbert didn't ask any questions. He nodded and parked the car near a bank not too far away. It was rush hour, and there were a lot of cars on the road, especially since this bank was the only one that was open 24 hours. The people who came here to do business parked their cars at the entrance, and the traffic was a little chaotic. Lin Yi got out of the car with Meng Yao and Yushu. Meng Yao frowned. "What are you doing here?" "Don't forget that I'm a student here too," Lin Yi said with a smile. Meng Yao remembered that Lin Yi was a student of the school today. As well, he'd need a bank card as well. She didn't say anything else as she pulled Yushu's hand into the bank. The jade on Lin Yi's neck reacted the moment he stepped into the bank, startling Lin Yi. It was the same jade he'd brought out of the cave at the foot of West Star Mountain, but Lin Yi still didn't know what it was for or how to use it. But the jade would always react in a subtle way every time something big happened, as if it was trying to send Lin Yi a message. Lin Yi didn't know what the jade was trying to say, but something was bound to happen once it happened. Just like that time in North Africa, he and the person he was protecting were trapped in the enemy's encirclement, but he relied on the early warning of the jade pendant time and time again to avoid the enemy's attacks and was finally rescued. Or perhaps before something good happened, the jade pendant would give a similar warning. For example, he once helped old Lin buy a lottery ticket and won $20. So, no matter what, the jade's reaction made Lin Yi's nerves go on high alert. Meng Yao and Yushu got their numbers after entering the bank, and Lin Yi got his number as well before sitting down at the waiting area. Lin Yi sat beside Yushu, knowing that Meng Yao was still hostile towards him. Yushu looked at Lin Yi meaningfully, the corner of her lips curling up. Lin Yi was in a very tense state as he waited for his number. Every time the jade reacted, something would happen, and this time would be no exception. Suddenly, Lin Yi's eyes stopped on a black MPV parked outside the bank. "Let's go." Lin Yi stood up abruptly, grabbing Yushu's hand, as he spoke to Meng Yao and Yushu. "What are you doing?" Yushu blinked as she looked at Lin Yi, her face blushing. She'd only held her brother's hand before, and she'd never held the hand of a young man before. Yushu didn't know what to do when Lin Yi grabbed her hand out of the blue, and she just stood there, dumbfounded. "Let's get out of here. We don't have time to explain." Lin Yi panicked as he tried to pull Yushu up. Slap! Meng Yao slapped Lin Yi's hand away from Yushu's. In actuality, it was more like Lin Yi had let go of Yushu's hand subconsciously. Meng Yao wouldn't have been able to pull that off with her strength alone. "Lin Yi, what are you doing? Are you taking advantage of Shu?" Meng Yao glared at Lin Yi, her eyes full of anger. I don't have time to explain. You guys leave with me." Lin Yi's eyes glanced at the corner of the street not far away from the bank's window as he said anxiously, "Taking advantage?" Lin Yi almost fainted. What kind of advantage was that? "Why," Meng Yao humphed, "who do you think you are? What's wrong with you? If you want to leave, you can leave by yourself. We still need to get a card." Yushu didn't know what was going on. What was wrong with Lin Yi? He looked calm and collected. Why was he so impulsive all of a sudden? "Let's get out of here first," Lin Yi couldn't help but say as he grabbed their hands. Yushu and Meng Yao's hands were pulled up by Lin Yi, one on the left and one on the right. "Let go." Meng Yao was going crazy. She didn't think that Lin Yi would reach out to her after molesting Yushu. She tried her best to shake off Lin Yi's hands. Yao, let's get out of here first." Yushu was more rational than Meng Yao. She had recovered from the shock and saw that Lin Yi's face didn't have that perverted expression on it anymore. Instead, it was replaced with an anxious expression. Yushu understood Lin Yi better than Meng Yao did, and she knew that Lin Yi wouldn't come all the way to the bank just to mess with them. If he really wanted to take advantage of them, then last night would have been the best time to do so. Unless there was something wrong with his brain, he wouldn't choose to do it in a crowded bank. Meng Yao paused and looked at Yushu strangely. She didn't understand why Yushu was on Lin Yi's side. All of a sudden, Lin Yi looked at the hesitant Meng Yao and sighed. It was too late. This was because he had already seen a few men in black trench coats pushing open the door of the bank and walking in. Bang! A sharp gunshot rang out, and the orderly bank immediately fell into chaos. Screams, children's cries, and the alarm went off at the same time. "Don't move, we'll kill whoever moves." The leader was a bald man wearing a black mask. He raised a black pistol and shouted at the people in the bank. Lin Yi sighed softly. He had missed the best opportunity to escape when he was fighting with Meng Yao and Yushu. It seemed like it was impossible for him to escape now. Chapter 34. The Bank Robbery. Lin Yi wasn't the heroic type, quite the opposite. He'd always kept a low profile, knowing what he should do and what he shouldn't do. Just like in North Africa, Lin Yi had always remembered that his job was to protect the visiting delegation, not to act like a hero in a war-torn place. As a result, Lin Yi's priority was to protect Meng Yao and Yushu, not to capture the robbers. The police would take care of things like this, and Lin Yi didn't want to get involved. Meng Yao and Yushu, evidently, had never been in a situation like this before. They were a little stunned, not knowing what to do. Everyone listen up. Put your hands on your head and squat down. I promise I won't hurt you. However, if anyone dares to move, don't blame me for being rude. Baldy fired another shot into the sky. The originally noisy bank instantly quietened down. The children forgot to cry, and the adults forgot to shout. Everyone was obedient, hugging their heads and squatting on the ground. They didn't have much of a choice against the gun-wielding robbers. They had to obey if they wanted to live. It wasn't that these people didn't have a sense of justice, but that whoever stepped up would pay with their lives. While Baldy was lecturing them with his gun, Baldy's accomplices had already rushed to the front of the bank's counter. After smashing the bank's window with a hammer, they used their guns to force the bank staff to put the money into the designated bag. Hurry up! What the fuck are you waiting for? One of the robbers barked impatiently at a middle-aged bank employee. I'll shoot you if you keep this up. Yes, yes. The man was timid. He was scared by the robber, and his hands trembled. Pa, a stack of banknotes fell to the ground and scattered. Motherf asterisk cur, are you trying to stall for time? The robber glared and fired a shot, hitting the man's arm. The man cried out in pain as he clutched at his arm. The robber's previous shots were all empty. Although they had a certain deterrent effect, it was not as strong as this shot. This shot was really aimed at people. So in the bank, whether it was the staff or the customers, they were so shocked that they covered their mouths. They were even more afraid of these criminals and did not dare to move. Baldy was very satisfied with his subordinate's decision to kill one to warn the others, and he swept his gaze across the entire bank. Yao Yao, I'm scared. Yushu was usually a brash girl, but she gripped Meng Yao's arm tightly at this critical moment. Her face was pale as a sheet. It's okay. It's okay. Shu, I'll protect you. Meng Yao was scared herself, but Yushu was a year younger than her. She had to act like a big sister and comfort her. You two don't have to comfort each other. I will protect your safety. Lin Yi said calmly. Although Lin Yi wasn't sure that he could capture all the robbers alive, he could still protect Meng Yao and Yushu from harm. Meng Yao moved her lips, wanting to say something sarcastic to Lin Yi out of habit, but she didn't say anything when she saw his determined gaze. Seeing that the robbers were about to leave the bank, police sirens came from outside the bank. The customers in the bank frowned when they heard the sirens. After all, sometimes it was a good thing that the police came, but in this situation, the robbers couldn't run away. It was inevitable that they would do something extreme. If they took a few more hostages, it would be even worse. So most of the people felt gloomy at this moment. To them, it didn't matter how much money was lost in the bank. Being able to walk out of here safely was the most important thing. The robbers in the bank, listen to me. You are now surrounded. Please put down your weapons immediately. Surrender and fight for leniency is your only way out. Otherwise, only death awaits you. Outside the bank, there was a voice shouting into the microphone. Humph. Baldy heard the voice and humphed coldly. He turned to one of his men. Tell the people outside that I'll kill them if they do anything. The man understood immediately and came to the bank's door. What the hell are you yelling for? Yell again. And our boss will kill them. The police at the door went silent. They had to save the bank, but they also had to protect the people inside. It was a tough job. After receiving the call, the vice captain of the criminal police team, Ling Shan, rushed to the bank with a large group of people. The captain of the criminal police team, Yang Huaijuan, had gone to another city for a meeting, and Ling Shan was left in charge of the team. To be honest, Ling Shan was under a lot of pressure, especially after the call from the director. He told her to lead a team to deal with the bank robbery, hinting to her that Peng Zhan's daughter and Elder Chen's granddaughter were in the bank as well. If something were to happen to Yushu, it wouldn't just be him, the director, but even the officials above him would be shaken. So, after the robber's threatening words, Ling Shan decisively ordered her men to stop yelling and not do anything to provoke the robber. Baldy was very satisfied with the policeman's silence. He carried his gun and scanned the group of customers who were squatting on the ground. Many customers also understood that the criminals wanted to find a hostage as a bargaining chip with the police. So thinking of this, many people quickly lowered their heads and didn't dare to raise their heads. They were afraid that they would be the ones chosen. After all, once they became the robber's hostage, their lives would be in danger. They didn't have the courage to face these cruel robbers. Baldy smiled coldly as he walked towards the crowd. His eyes finally landed on Meng Yao, who was standing beside Lin Yi. "You, stand up." Baldy pointed his gun at Meng Yao. Meng Yao was shocked. She subconsciously tightened her grip on Yushu's hand and looked up at Baldy. "Ha, you're quite pretty, girl." Baldy laughed lewdly and pointed his gun at Meng Yao again. "I'm talking to you. Stand up." Meng Yao had never been in a situation like this. Her heart was beating very fast. She didn't know what to do, but she forced herself to stay strong. She told herself that she couldn't cry at a time like this. She had to be strong. Chapter 35. I'll be your hostage, I'll be your hostage. What's so great about bullying a little girl? Lin, he said faintly as he stood up. Meng Yao stared at the man who'd pinned her down in disbelief. He'd actually stood up for her at a time like this? Wasn't he afraid of death? It was true that Meng Yao understood that Lin Yi had taken a lot of her father's money, but money was nothing compared to life. No one didn't care about their own lives, and Meng Yao wasn't stupid enough to think that Lin Yi was standing up just because he'd taken someone's money. Meng Yao felt that Lin Yi wasn't as despicable as before. At the very least, he was a man with an indomitable spirit. Meng Yao was certain that Pin Liang wouldn't stand up at a time like this. Perhaps he was even more afraid than she was, hiding his head even lower than she was. HM? Why was she comparing Lin Yi to Pin Liang? Meng Yao shook the unrealistic thoughts. Now wasn't the time to think about things like that. Fuck. Baldy wasn't expecting someone to cause trouble for him. After all, it was impossible for anyone to hide from a hostage. And yet this guy was still charging in? Was he an idiot? Who the fuck are you? Did I call you? Baldy frowned as he glared at Lin Yi. Stay where you are if you don't want to die. Don't you need a hostage? Who's different? Lin Yi shrugged. Don't worry, I'll cooperate with you. Motherf asterisk cur. Baldy was enraged. He thought to himself, why does this kid have to ruin my plans? He couldn't help but feel a surge of anger as he raised his gun and fired at Lin Yi. With Lin Yi's current level of training, Baldy wouldn't be able to hurt him even if he shot him at such a close range. Ever since he started practicing the art of dragon mastery, Lin Yi's reflexes had become abnormally sharp. He only needed to tilt his body slightly to dodge the bullet. But the moment Lin Yi turned, Lin Yi's heart jumped. There was a girl behind him, and Baldy's bullet was coming at him from above. If he dodged, the bullet would hit the girl behind him, and even if the girl didn't die, she'd be heavily injured. Lin Yi clenched his teeth and turned his body around again. Facing the bullet pierced into Lin Yi's thigh. It wasn't as painful as it should have been, but Lin Yi still frowned. Fortunately, Lin Yi's positioning wasn't bad, and the bullet hit the flesh instead of the leg bone. The crowd screamed involuntarily, and Meng Yao and Yushu covered their mouths at the same time. Lin Yi took a bullet. Meng Yao and Yushu, on the other hand, saw it all clearly. Lin Yi could have easily dodged the shot, but he didn't want to hurt the girl behind him, so he took the shot. At the thought, Meng Yao's gaze on the girl behind Lin Yi grew angrier. Fuck, there's someone who's not afraid of death. Baldy was very surprised. Was this kid crazy? Boss, there are more and more cops outside. One of the robbers ran over and whispered to Baldy, "Fuck." Baldy cursed and pointed his gun at Lin Yi's head. "Since you're willing to be a hostage, then you'll do it together. Ma Lu, look after this kid." "All right." Ma Lu took out his gun and pointed it at Lin Yi's head. "Kid, who told you to act like you're a hero at a time like this? It's not that easy to be a hero." Lin Yi didn't say anything, and he was thinking about whether he should do it here or wait for a while. But here the robbers were too scattered, and it wasn't convenient for him to make a move. There were too many people here, and it'd be even harder to make a move if there was a big mess. "Girl, stand up." Baldy didn't want to let go of Meng Yao. He aimed his gun at Meng Yao again. She didn't know why, but Meng Yao wasn't as scared as before. She stopped Yushu, who was about to stand up with her, with a look, and stood up resolutely. Yushu wanted to stand up with Meng Yao, but Meng Yao's eyes told her not to go, and go back and think of a way to save them. Naturally, Yushu wouldn't let her emotions get the better of her. "Let's go." Baldy pointed the gun at Meng Yao's head and said, "Lin." He was a little puzzled. Why did Baldy have his eyes on Meng Yao? Could it be because of Meng Yao's beauty? Lin Yi could only think of that because he couldn't think of anything else that would make Baldy interested in Meng Yao. Logically speaking, one hostage was enough. When negotiating with the police, it wasn't about how many hostages you had, but whether or not you had a hostage. Even if you had a hostage, the police wouldn't act rashly. "Police outside. Listen up." Baldy's underling, who had gone to talk to the police, stood at the bank's entrance and continued shouting, "Everyone, retreat 100 meters away, and don't send anyone to follow us after we get in the car, or we'll kill the hostages." Outside the bank, Ling Shan frowned when she heard the robber's words. Naturally, she didn't want to retreat 100 meters, but when she remembered that there were hostages in the bank, she sighed and said to her underlings, "Retreat." Actually, Ling Shan didn't want to surround the bank in public because it would only put pressure on the robbers and make them do crazy things. If they surrounded the bank and followed them secretly, the robbers might not choose hostages. But Ling Shan's suggestion was called heroism by the police, and it made her very depressed. Baldy was very satisfied with the police's actions, and he pointed his gun at Meng Yao's head while Ma Lu pointed his gun at Lin Yi's head, and they walked out of the bank together. Yao Yao, Faubert, who was standing beside Ling Shan, suddenly saw Meng Yao in the robber's hands, and his heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Li, you know the hostage?" Ling Shan had a bad feeling about this. "That's Mr. Chu's daughter, Meng Yao." Faubert was very nervous. Mr. Chu was on a business trip, and if something were to happen to the miss at this time, he'd be in deep trouble. What? Ling Shan froze, and her heart was even more panicked. Why did the robbers choose Peng Zhan's daughter as a hostage? The more you feared, the more it happened. Ling Shan could only use the walkie-talkie to report the current situation to the director. "Director, one of the hostages is Peng Zhan's daughter, Meng Yao." Chapter 36. Chapter 36. Infuriating car plate, but the snipers here are already 90% sure that they'll be able to kill the robbers. Ling Shan argued. "You said it yourself, 90%. What about 10%? What if they hurt Miss Chu? And I won't be able to walk away unscathed." The director scolded. "I told you, don't do anything rash. Fulfill the robbers' conditions first, and then we'll decide what to do." "Got it." Ling Shan was quite troubled. She'd wanted to let her men take the risk and use the snipers to kill the robbers, but she didn't dare give risky orders like that. The director wasn't on her side anymore. What else could she do? Baldy was very proud of the police's indifference. He quickly took his men to the black modern business car on the side of the road, then started the car and drove away. The robbers had 2 hostages, and so Ling Shan didn't dare make any rash moves. She could only watch as the robbers got into a black MPV and drove off. Miss Faubert was panicking as he watched the car leave. He'd called Mr. Chu earlier, but he couldn't get through. Now that the robbers had Meng Yao as a hostage, Faubert was starting to panic. "Mr. Li, the police will take care of this, don't worry," Lingshan said to Faubert before taking out her walkie-talkie. "Attention all squads. Attention all squads. The robber's car plate is a 74,110 MPV, and it's already left the bank. If you see it, be prepared to follow it. 74110. After giving the order, Lingshan mumbled the car number. This robber really didn't care about her at all, getting a 74,110 plate number. With that thought, Lingshan took out her walkie-talkie and keyed in a number. "Traffic police? I'm Lingshan from the criminal police. Help me look up a car plate. Songa 74110. HM? What? A Buick? Isn't it a MPV? Is that right? All right, it's fine then." That damned fake license plate. It actually had such an arrogant license plate number. This was obviously putting on a show for him. This was a blatant provocation. Lingshan was about to explode from anger, but she really did get the license plate number. Baldy ordered his men to tie up Meng Yao and Lin Yi's hands as soon as he got in the car. He looked at Lin Yi proudly. "I say, you idiot. What does this have to do with you? Why are you joining in the fun? The person we're looking for is the Chu First Miss, yet you insist on acting like a hero. Don't blame us for capturing you as well." After listening to Baldy's words, Lin Yi's heart suddenly moved. This guy actually knew Meng Yao. This was something the two didn't foresee. They thought that the hostages were chosen randomly, and that Baldy was obsessed with Meng Yao because he thought she was pretty and wanted to take advantage of her. They didn't think that these people had a premeditated plan. They were here for Meng Yao. You know me? Meng Yao was shocked as well. She didn't expect these thugs to know her. At the same time, she couldn't help but ask, subconsciously, "I know you. How could I not know you? You're the daughter of the chairman of Pingzhan Industries." Baldy enjoyed the feeling of being on top of others. "Why would I capture you if I didn't know you? Why did you capture me?" Meng Yao felt that something was wrong. These people seemed to have a premeditated plan, and they were here for her. "Capture you? Haha, what do you think?" Baldy opened his big mouth, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "Tell me, what do you have that's worth capturing?" Meng Yao was startled. This man couldn't be a pervert, could he? After capturing her, he wanted to molest her? At the thought, Meng Yao felt that it was highly possible. She was so pretty, so sexy with big eyes, fair skin, and firm breasts. Any man would fall for her? No. Meng Yao wanted to cry. She didn't want to live anymore if she was violated by this ugly monster. If she had a choice, she'd rather give herself to Lin Yi than this guy. Why did it have to be Lin Yi? The only person Meng Yao could think of was Lin Yi. Pin Liang was an annoying bastard that Meng Yao hated to the extreme. Other than Faubert, there was only Lin Yi left, wasn't there? She really was a failure. Her social circle was too narrow. She didn't even know other men. Why was she so unlucky? Meng Yao sighed as she tried her best to think of a way to deal with this. Baldy saw Meng Yao's face turn red and white, and he guessed that she was thinking dirty. He said disdainfully, "Fuck, I've got plenty of pretty girls. I don't care about little girls like you. Someone's paying to capture you." "Of course." Meng Yao let out a sigh of relief when she heard Baldy's words. It was good that he didn't have that kind of thoughts about her. "Boss, I like her even if you don't like her. Why don't you let me play with her for a bit?" Ma Lu's face turned lecherous. He wanted to make a move on Meng Yao. "Ma Lu, you'd better King calm down. You can't touch this girl. The higher-ups said that she needs to be whole." Baldy said, as he glared at Ma Lu. "Oh, that's too bad." Ma Lu seemed to be afraid of Baldy. He sat back down obediently after the scolding, not daring to make any more moves. She's so pretty, I wouldn't have lived my life in vain if I could have a go with her. Don't talk about useless things like that. I'll give you the money after this is over. You can go find any girl you want and play with her however you want, Baldy said impatiently with a wave of his hand. He wasn't happy with Ma Lu's impatience. Meng Yao let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness these people weren't perverts, or her innocence would have been ruined. But the worst part was that Baldy had tied her little hand with that bastard Lin Yi's big hand, letting him take advantage of her. But when she thought of Lin Yi's hand, Meng Yao couldn't help but feel a surge of warmth in her heart. Thinking back to the scene where he pressed her down with his hand, Meng Yao felt an indescribable feeling in her heart. What was wrong with her? Could it be that her impression of him had changed just because she was touched? Humph, no. It's not that easy. But if it were someone else, would they have stood up for her at that moment? What was Lin Yi thinking? Meng Yao couldn't figure out what Lin Yi was thinking. Fuck, you dumb girl. You're still smiling like an idiot at a time like this. Baldy was pissed as he saw Meng Yao's face blushing and giggling. This was a humiliation to him. He was the kidnapper, and this girl was smiling in front of him. Wasn't she looking down on him? Chapter 37. Chapter 37. Who killed who? All you know how to do is curse women. What kind of ability is that? Lin Yi curled his lips as he looked at Baldy. I say, Baldy, your real goal isn't to rob a bank, is it? Robbing a bank was just a cover. Wasn't it? Your real goal was Meng Yao. Humph. So what if you saw through me? You're still my prisoner, aren't you? There was no need for Baldy to deny it at this point. As far as he was concerned, this pretentious guy was a fish under his chopping block. He could do whatever he wanted, and he wasn't afraid of Baldy knowing his true intentions. So what if he told him, "You won't be able to run far. The police will follow you and kill you"? Lin Yi said sympathetically to Baldy, "That's impossible. I've thought of a backup plan." Baldy said proudly, "The police should be running around in circles right now. Heh. There's more than one car like this." Is that so? Lin Yi was a little impressed with Baldy's intellect. He wasn't an idiot, but it didn't matter. The stupidest thing he'd ever done was let Lin Yi get in the car, and that meant that his mission was doomed to fail. At the same time, Ling Shan held the walkie-talkie nervously, trying to keep in touch with the other teams. Captain Song, I'm Lu Wongli from Team 1. We've spotted a modern van with the license plate A74110, awaiting instructions. Lu Wongli's voice came from the walkie-talkie. Follow them, but be careful. Don't let them see you. Ling Shan ordered. Yes. Lu Wongli ordered the driver to start the car. Ling Shan let out a breath of relief. Humph, no matter how smart you guys are, you didn't expect me to have people following you at every intersection, did you? Let's see where you can run now. Ling Shan was still feeling smug when another report came from the walkie-talkie. Captain Song, I'm the captain of Team 2, Zhang Xiaoheng. We've spotted a modern van with the license plate A74110, awaiting instructions. This time, it was Zhang Xiaoheng from Team 2. What? Ling Shan blinked. Where did you see it? Central Ring Road. Awaiting instructions. Zhang Xiaoheng said. Central Road? That's not right. Didn't we see Lu Wongli from 1st Squadron on Wayman Road? Ling Shan said, confused. How did the kidnappers know how to drive? Did he turn around and go back? Ling Shan instructed. Follow them. Don't let them notice you. Yes. Zhang Xiaoheng executed Ling Shan's order. Captain Song? I'm Sun Jiaxia from 3rd Platoon. We've spotted the Song A74110 Hyundai van. Please give us instructions. Sun Jiaxia's voice came from the walkie-talkie again. You guys saw it too? Ling Shan felt a headache coming on. Her sharp senses told her that she'd been tricked. They'd sent out more than 174,110 car this time. And this was exactly what they wanted. Ling Shan was pissed to death. She'd been tricked by these kidnappers. Ling Shan wasn't happy at all. If only Captain Yang was here, he'd be able to see through the kidnapper's ploy. She'd fallen for it just like that. How embarrassing. Ling Shan didn't wait for him to finish before asking, "Did you guys find the songs on a 74110 Hyundai minivan?" "Yeah, Captain Song, you're amazing. We saw the song a 74110 Hyundai van. What do we do now?" the captain asked. "Follow them." Ling Shan felt like she was about to collapse. She could basically confirm that the kidnappers had used the first and second 74110 Hyundai van to escape after being followed by their own people. They must be far away by now. Why kidnap her? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. He really wanted to know why they'd kidnapped Meng Yao. If it was just money, then the bank robbery this time had more than 1,000,000 kwai. Were they planning to extort money from Pingzhan? One had to know that this was a very dangerous thing. There was a high chance that they'd be caught by the police instead. Why? Good question. Baldy curled his lips and pointed at the bags of money on the floor. It's simple. I did it for money. For money? Linny frowned. Kidnap? To blackmail Meng Yao's father? And make him pay the ransom? You don't need to know that, Baldy said, annoyed that Lin Yi was asking too many questions. It's fine if you tell me. At least you should know when you die, right? Lin Yi looked very curious, so innocent that it was hard to reject him. Baldy looked at Lin Yi, thinking that there was no harm in telling this kid. He'd kill him sooner or later. So he said, "Someone gave us money to kidnap this girl. What do you do after the kidnapping?" Lin Yi asked. "Not yet. We're waiting for the call," Baldy said. "Then who asked you to kidnap her?" Lin Yi continued asking. "I don't know. Sihua bro introduced us," Baldy said. "Who's Sihua bro?" Lin Yi asked again. "Fuck. Why do you have so many questions? Mother asterisk cur. If you keep asking, I'll kill you." Baldy was getting impatient from Lin Yi's questions. "Oh, okay. Then don't move. Or I'll kill you." A gun suddenly appeared in Lin Yi's hand, and he pointed it at Baldy's temple. You. Baldy's eyes widened. Who could tell him what was going on? Wasn't this kid's hands tied? Why did he have a gun? In the car, the other kidnappers were shocked as well, not understanding what was going on. Lin Yi pointed a gun at their boss's head. How did you untie the rope?" Baldy didn't understand. Indeed, he didn't understand. Weren't Lin Yi's hands tied together? "Oh, I was stupid when I was a kid. When I played with flower rope, I often tied my hands together in a dead knot. After a while, I could untie it myself," Linny said. Wow. Baldy's mouth opened wide in shock. Was that even possible? Flower rope could be so powerful? However, Baldy was still surprised. "Then why do you have a gun?" "I got it from that Ma Lu," Lin Yi said as he pointed at Ma Lu, who was closest to him. Ma Lu subconsciously touched his trouser pocket and was shocked. His gun was indeed gone. It seemed like it was really in Lin Yi's hands. This time, Baldy was completely speechless. He gave up. What was he playing at? This kid was too powerful, wasn't he? In his heart, he was cursing Ma Lu's ancestors. Chapter 38. Should I take off my pants? Lin Yi poked Baldy's head with the gun. "Tell them not to move, or I'll kill the hostages." "You don't do anything stupid." Baldy wanted to cry. Wasn't that what he and his men said to the police at the bank? Just like that, retribution had fallen on him. What was karma in one's lifetime? Just like now. Yeah, not bad. Linny nodded, satisfied. "Can you tell me now? Who's Tihua bro?" "My boss. I don't know anything else, but he asked me to do this. Bro, please don't shoot." Baldy was a coward, too. He'd been acting all high and mighty before, but even he was scared when his life was in danger. He'd accepted this mission for the money so that he could have a good time, but it wasn't worth it if he had to put his life on the line. Linny frowned. He could tell that Baldy was just a small fry and didn't know what was going on. All right, stop the car, Lynn ordered. Stop the car? For what? Baldy blinked. Of course we're getting off the car. You're not planning on kidnapping her now, are you? Linny glared. No. I mean, you're not sending us to the police? Baldy wasn't expecting Lynn to let them go. What does that have to do with me? Lynn rolled his eyes. I'm not a cop. Do they give me a salary? Baldy was overjoyed when he heard what Linny said. He thought that Lynn was going to send them to the police, but now that they'd escaped death, it was only natural that he'd be overjoyed. They hadn't completed the mission, but they'd gotten a huge sum of money from the bank, enough for the rest of their lives. Therefore, the bald man excitedly ordered the driver to stop the car. Lynn pulled out a gun from Baldy's body and tossed it to Meng Yao. Take this and aim at their car wheels. Oh. Meng Yao didn't know why Lynn said that, but she still took the gun and held it tightly in her hands. Lynn let Meng Yao out of the car first, and then he did the same. You guys can choose to shoot me or Meng Yao, but you have to kill me. If you don't kill me, I'll aim at your gas tank. Do you understand? Bald? Lynn said as he patted Baldy's bald head. No way. Baldy shivered for no reason. This brat, Lynn was really strange. Baldy didn't want to complicate matters any further. When Lynn got out of the car, he paid special attention to the Jade's reaction, but there was no sign of it. Lynn let out a sigh of relief. It seemed like Baldy and his men had made a smart choice. If Linny's Jade had reacted in the slightest, Lynn would have grabbed Baldy and forced him to get out of the car with him. Lynn and Meng Yao got out of the car, and the car sped away like a wisp of smoke. It was just as Linny had predicted. The Baldy didn't do anything untoward. What are you looking at me for? Call Faubert and ask him to come get us, Lynn said, amused and angry at the same time as he looked at Meng Yao, who was staring at him blankly. Oh, Meng Yao couldn't believe it. Just like that, but looking at the van driving away, it did seem like it was the case. But what was Linny doing? Using a commanding tone to talk to her? Hey, why didn't you confiscate all their guns and send them to the police station? Meng Yao was still holding a grudge against Lin Yi's last sentence. What did he mean by he wasn't a cop and the police station didn't pay him? Couldn't he do something good? That car was full of cowards threatening their boss with a gun. They wouldn't dare to act recklessly, but once their guns were confiscated, they'd know that they were done for. They'd make a last stand. Lin Yi said, "But you had their boss as a hostage?" Meng Yao didn't understand. "You're done for. Why would you care about your boss? Please don't be so naive, okay?" Lin Yi said helplessly, "It was pure luck that we were able to get out of danger this time." "Hey, who the hell did you piss off? These people were obviously coming for you." "Humph, stop being so cocky." Meng Yao wasn't happy with Lin Yi's attitude. "You're my follower." "Okay, is this how you talk to your master?" Lin Yi was speechless. This woman was really unreasonable. Yushu sat in Faubert's car, wiping away her tears. Who knew what would happen to Meng Yao and Lin Yi after they were captured? If they were lucky, they'd be released, but if they weren't, Yushu didn't dare to think about it. Faubert, on the other hand, had a worried expression on his face. He couldn't reach Pingzhan at this critical moment, and it made him very anxious. Suddenly, the phone rang. Faubert was startled and picked up the phone. He looked at the caller ID, and a mixed expression appeared on his face. It was Meng Yao's number, but it might not be her calling herself. It could also be the robbers using Meng Yao's phone to call him. Either way, there was news. "Hello? Hello." Faubert picked up the phone carefully. "Faubert, come get me." Meng Yao felt that Faubert's voice was so friendly for the first time. Ling Shan and the police came with Faubert. Yao Yao. Yushu was the first to rush out of the car, hugging Meng Yao tightly. You scared me. I thought I'd never see you again. Stupid girl, you're always talking nonsense. Meng Yao had recovered from the shock and didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Yushu's words. Mr. Lin, are you all right? Faubert asked quickly after seeing the blood on Lin Yi. I got shot in the thigh. It's nothing serious, right? Lin Yi stood up with a limp. It really did hurt a little. After all, it was a bit of an aftershock. Faubert really admired Lin Yi now. He got shot, and he said he was fine. What a real man. A real man. He wondered if Lin Yi would be speechless if he knew what Faubert was thinking. He remembered that there was a female celebrity who was jokingly called a real man. Mr. Lin, right? Please come with us to the police station to record your statement. Ling Shan walked over and said formally to Lin Yi. Chapter 39. You got in through the back door, didn't you? Huh? Ling Shan blinked, her face reddening as she trembled with anger. This guy was acting like a gangster in front of her. How could she do that? She'd have slapped Lin Yi right there, and then, if she hadn't done that for Faubert's sake. Captain Song, what Mr. Lin means is that his leg got hit by a bullet. He can show you if you don't believe me, Faubert quickly explained for Lin Yi, knowing that she'd misunderstood. Ling Shan only noticed the bloodstains on Lin Yi's pants then, feeling a little embarrassed. Is that so? You should go to the hospital first. She hated Lin Yi a lot, though. She might be a cop, but she was still a girl. What kind of person would do something like that? A qualified cop needs to have sharp observation skills. There's a lot of blood on my pants, and you didn't even see it. I really don't understand how you became a captain. Did you? Did you get in through the back door? Lin Yi said faintly, noticing the disgust in Ling Shan's eyes. Ling Shan's biggest weakness was her lack of detective experience. This had always been a thorn in her side, but those who knew her well knew that her family was powerful, but she didn't become a vice captain through the back door. She used to be a combat instructor in the Special Forces with the rank of major. She transferred to the local criminal police force as a vice captain, so there was nothing wrong with her rank. She was one of the best in the criminal police force, too. Other than the captain, Yang Huaijuan. No one else was a match for her. But Lin Yi's words had hit her where it hurt. She was good at combat, but that didn't mean she was good in other areas. She just transferred, and what she lacked the most was the observation skills she had when it came to solving cases. The people in the team respected her because of her skills, not because of her ability to solve cases. As a result, Ling Shan had been learning, following Huaijuan around quietly every time he went out. She understood where she was lacking. It was just that Huaijuan, who'd left his profession 2 years earlier than her, had a wealth of detective experience. Ling Shan admired him, but also felt a little jealous. But Yang Huaijuan was on a business trip today, and Ling Shan had no choice but to go alone. She ended up getting mocked by that bastard Lin Yi, pissing her off. But what Lin Yi said was the truth, and she couldn't refute it. All she could do was grit her teeth, unable to do anything. In fact, it was just a bullet that hit his body. Lin Yi could deal with it himself. In the war-torn North Africa, who would go to the hospital when they were shot. He was afraid that he would be killed by the enemy before he could reach the hospital. But with a woman like Ling Shan following him, Lin Yi didn't want to show off too much. What Lin Yi didn't expect was that Ling Shan would really go against him, going to the hospital with him to record his statement. But it was up to her. Lin Yi didn't have anything to hide from her. Ling Shan didn't dare put on airs when it came to Meng Yao, the princess of Pengzhan. She didn't force her to go to the police station, either. She recorded her statement in Faubert's car. Shu, how's your brother? Ling Shan and Yushu had known each other for a long time, and Ling Shan felt quite guilty towards Yushu's brother. Humph, it's none of your business. Yushu smiled coldly and turned her head away, not giving Ling Shan any face at all. Ling Shan smiled bitterly and turned to Meng Yao. Miss Chu, let's take a statement then. Yushu couldn't help but gasp as Meng Yao recounted what had happened. Wow, Lin Yi's that good? It can't be, right? Yao Yao, I told you letting him be your shield is the right thing to do. I guarantee that he'll help you deal with any man who tries to harass you. Humph, who wants him? Meng Yao thought back to how arrogant Lin Yi was, and she was pissed. Ling Shan was curious as well. It seemed that this Lin Yi wasn't only good at talking. Ling Shan wasn't happy with Lin Yi's claim that she'd gotten in through the back door, but she wasn't an irrational person. From Meng Yao's description, Lin Yi was a man of strategy and bravery. Even after taking a bullet, he'd still been able to hold his ground against the assailant. His spirit was commendable. Ling Shan, on the other hand, looked down on Lin Yi's words. I'm not a cop. Do they give me a salary? Couldn't he be a good citizen? But after hearing Lin Yi's explanation from Meng Yao, Ling Shan realized that what Lin Yi did wasn't wrong. If they really pissed off the robbers, neither of them would be able to escape. But as for why the robbers were specifically targeting Meng Yao, she didn't understand. These people went around in circles just to kidnap Meng Yao. But it could also be a cover-up, not arousing House Chu's suspicions. There could also be other motives, but she didn't know for sure now. She could only wait for Baldy and his gang to be captured before making a decision. Miss, I think Mr. Lin is very qualified. Mr. Chu's eyes aren't wrong. With him with you, I can finally relax. Faubert said with lingering fear, but now he truly understood Mr. Chu's intentions. This Lin Yi really wasn't simple. Meng Yao's lips moved, wanting to refute Faubert's words, but for some reason, the scene in the bank where Lin Yi stood up for her kept replaying in her mind. Because of Ling Shan's presence, the hospital didn't ask too many questions about Lin Yi's gunshot wound. The hospital didn't need to take any responsibility for treating a gunshot wound under the name of the police. Lin Yi was pushed into the surgery room, and the main surgeon said to the nurse, "Prepare the anesthetic. I'm going to take out the bullet." No need. Lin Yi wasn't interested in anesthetics and other Western medicine. He didn't like using them. Once or twice wasn't a big deal, but if he used it too much, it would bring side effects to his body. The main surgeon paused. The people who brought him here didn't look like poor people, did they? It was impossible that they couldn't afford anesthetics, right? If he didn't use anesthetics, it would be very painful. The nerves at the base of the thigh were very dense. And although it was a simple surgery, the pain was much more painful than most major surgeries. Chapter 40. A plan comes to mind, it's fine, Lin Yi said with a relaxed smile. I don't like anesthetics. There'll be side effects. The surgeon was taken aback for a moment, but he nodded. Since Lin Yi insisted, he had no choice but to do as he was told. The surgery wasn't life-threatening, so he wasn't going to force the issue. Young man, you'll have to endure it. The surgeon ordered the nurses to get ready for the surgery. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of pain, but that didn't mean he didn't feel pain. Still, Lin Yi could endure this level of pain. Back then, when he fell from the top of the West Star Mountain, it was much more painful than this. It was the pain of his internal organs being strung together. Young man, how did you get hurt? The surgeon, Sun Weiman, was an experienced surgeon. His medical skills were excellent, but he also had a good eye for people. While Lin Yi had a gunshot wound, he didn't look like the kind of suspect the police would send to them. That was why Sun Weiman took the initiative to talk to him, distract Lin Yi, and lessen his pain. In the bank, got hit by a robber. Lin Yi understood what Sun Weiman was trying to say. Lin Yi's attention wasn't that easy to distract, of course. Lin Yi had been trained since he was young to never let his guard down under any circumstances, and never let his focus get distracted. Oh, I see. When Sun Weiman heard it, it was just as he had guessed. This young man was not a criminal suspect, but a victim. So he said frankly, the situation at the time was very tense, right? It's all right. Lin Yi said with a smile. I could have dodged the bullet, but there was a girl behind me. She'd be in trouble if I dodged the bullet, so I had no choice but to take it head on. Wasn't that a little stupid? Lin Yi had seen similar news reports back in the mountains. People who did good deeds were called idiots, and people who were cold and selfish were called smart. Lin Yi was mocking himself as he spoke. Ah, when Sun Wayman heard that Lin Yi was actually injured like this, he immediately admired this young man in his heart. Young man, you are very great. This wasn't a fool. This was a hero saving a damsel in distress. Did that girl fall in love with you at first sight? After that, I was taken hostage by the robbers. Who knows what she was thinking? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. At that time, she probably didn't think that I was taking the bullet for her. After all, the criminal was shooting at me. That's already very good. Young man, you know how to sacrifice yourself for others. Sun Wayman admired Lin Yi very much. What's your name? Lin Yi. It's on the medical record. Lin Yi said with a smile. I'm sorry. I'm in contact with too many patients every day. I rarely pay attention to these things, Sun Wayman said with embarrassment. The surgery went smoothly. Lin Yi didn't yell or move his legs either, so Wayman was able to finish the surgery in a short amount of time. Lin Yi's reaction surprised him. He didn't use any anesthetics, but Lin Yi was able to keep up with the surgery. This young man's willpower wasn't simple at all. After the surgery, Ling Shan came to the room to record Lin Yi's statement. She ran into Sun Weiben, the main surgeon. Sun Weiben naturally praised Lin Yi. Officer Song, this young man is really rare. Sacrificing himself for others, he should be a role model for society. You guys should give him an Outstanding Citizen Award for his bravery. What do you mean? Ling Shan admired Lin Yi's calmness in the face of the criminal, but that didn't count as sacrificing himself for others, did it? Meng Yao didn't go into too much detail about Lin Yi taking the bullet in the bank. She only said that Lin Yi was shot by the robber, so Ling Shan didn't know the details of the whole thing. Oh, you still don't know? Lin Yi could have dodged the gunman's shot, but he saw that there was a girl behind him. If he dodged the shot, the girl behind him would be in trouble. And so he took the shot. Sun Wayman praised. It's the first time I've seen a young man with such a sense of justice and compassion. Ling Shan frowned. Was this for real? Why did it sound like a story? Plus, a bullet wasn't something that Lin Yi could dodge just because he wanted to. Sun Wayman was a special ops instructor, and even he couldn't guarantee that he could dodge a bullet. Was this Lin Yi better than him? Ling Shan couldn't believe it. Dr. Sun, who did you hear this from? Lin Yi told me himself, Sun Wayman said. He said it himself? Ling Shan paused. How could she believe her own words? Was he messing with her? She said that she could kill an elephant with one punch. Who'd believe her? Sun Wayman saw that Ling Shan was doubtful as well. He smiled. This guy didn't even use anesthetics when he took the bullet out, and he didn't even complain about the pain. I believe what he's saying based on his mental fortitude alone. Sun Wayman had a lot of other things to do, so he couldn't keep chatting with Ling Shan. He left after a few words, and Ling Shan pushed the door open and walked into Lin Yi's room. Lin Yi wanted to leave immediately, but that would be too shocking. After all, he was injured in the leg, not the arm. So he pretended to lie down on the bed. Lin Yi, can you take the statement now? She didn't know why, but seeing Lin Yi lying down on the bed with his legs crossed made Ling Shan feel like he was asking for a beating. Yes, Lin Yi laid on the bed and looked up at Ling Shan. Noticing that the girl's chest was extraordinarily big, it was comparable to the AV girl he'd seen this morning, and upon closer inspection, Ling Shan's entire body was quite pretty. The temptation of the uniform. Perhaps sensing that there was something wrong with Lin Yi's eyes, Ling Shan subconsciously followed Lin Yi's gaze to her own body, and her face blushed. Due to long periods of high-intensity training, Ling Shan's chest had developed exceptionally well. It was even a little cumbersome. If she didn't wear a bra, she'd be shaking when she walked, and it was very inconvenient. She even wanted to have a liposuction surgery, but thinking about how embarrassing it would be, she decided against it. It was fine when she was in the special forces. Under the iron discipline, no one would pay attention to her chest. And so, she didn't pay much attention to it. But after joining the workforce, she often had to wear plain clothes to carry out missions, and she often went to places with crooks and honest people. It made her feel uncomfortable, and there were always men looking at her with perverted eyes. She really wanted to kick them to death, but what she didn't expect was that she was wearing a uniform. And this Lin, he still dared to stare at her like that. This was unforgivable. Ling Shan humphed coldly and sat on the chair beside Lin Yi's bed. Thinking about how to give this guy a small punishment, you're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.